ก็ดีจะสามารถเป็นเครื่องมือในการรับมือกับวิกฤตโลกซึ่งก็มีความวิกฤตทั้งได้หลายด้านนะครับโดยเฉพาะอย่างยิ่งความวิกฤตในด้านสงครามก็ดีด้านสิ่งแวดล้อมก็ดีด้านการเมืองอะไรต่างๆก็ดีแต่ท้ายที่สุดแล้วก็อาจจะต้องอาศัยเครื่องมือในทางปัญญาที่ในพระไตรปิฎกจะให้คำตอบส่วนนี้นะครับก็วันนี้เราก็จะได้องค์ความรู้ซึ่งก็จะเป็นเรื่องที่น่าตื่นเต้นก็ขอรอรับชมกันนะครับระหว่างนี้พอมีเวลาให้ท่านทั้งหลายเดินทางเข้ามาณห้องประชุมแห่งนี้และทางออนไลน์ด้วยนะครับผม
In the morning session, we have already got a very good body of knowledge from the keynote speakers. And in this afternoon as well, we do have the 3 keynote speakers who will come here to exchange and share the experience of the body of knowledge under the Buddhist wisdom coping with a global crisis. Under the role of MCU Tipitaka Study Institute and also under the role of the MCU would be a very good tools to coping with the global crisis.
สำหรับงานในภาคเช้านะครับเราก็ได้รับความเมตตาอนุเคราะห์จากท่านรองอธิการบดีฝ่ายวิชาการท่านพระมหาสมบูรณ์วุฒิกโรรองศาสตราจารย์ดร.และก็เป็นประธานในการเปิดงานและก็มีการ Open Speech by the Most Spiritual พระมหาสมบูรณ์วุฒิกโรนะครับและก็มีวิทยากรผู้ทรงคุณวุฒิได้ให้ความรู้ในภาคเช้าซึ่งในภาคบ่ายนี้ก็จะมีเวที2เวทีนะครับอันนี้คือเวทีกลุ่มที่1นะครับก็คงเป็นเรื่องที่น่าสนใจนะครับสำหรับบทบาทของมหาวิทยาลัยมหาจุฬาลงกรณราชวิทยาลัยและบทบาทของผู้ที่เป็นผู้นำทางจิตวิญญาณนะครับที่จะนำเสนอเครื่องมือในการแก้ไขวิกฤตโลกต่อสังคมนะครับขณะนี้ท่านอาจารย์วิทยากรก็ได้ทยอยเดินทางมานะครับท่านผู้ช่วยศาสตราจารย์ดร.ณัชพลสิริสวัสดิ์และก็ท่านวิทยากรท่านศาสตราจารย์ดร.แฟรงค์เจฮอปมันท่านก็เดินทางมาถึงแล้วนะครับเนื่องจากเมื่อเช้าท่านประธานก็ได้ทำพิธีทางศาสนาเป็นที่เรียบร้อยจุดบูชาพระรัตนตรัยแล้วนำบูชาพระรัตนตรัยเป็นที่เรียบร้อยก็สืบเนื่องถึงภาคบ่ายด้วยนะครับเพราะงั้นก็เมื่อถึงเวลา 13 นาฬิกาก็จะได้กราบอาราธนาและก็เรียนเชิญวิทยากรได้ขึ้นสู่เวทีแล้วก็แนะนำผู้ร่วมเสวนาในวันนี้นะครับก่อนอื่นนั้นก็ยังมีเวลาที่เราท่านทั้งหลายที่สนใจนะครับโดยเฉพาะอย่างยิ่งท่านนิสิตนักศึกษาและก็แขกผู้มีเกียรติที่สนใจจะเข้ารับฟังการเสวนาในภาคบ่ายนี้ยังพอมีเวลาที่จะเข้าร่วมงานสัมมนาหน้าห้องประชุมเธียเตอร์แห่งนี้นะครับยังมีที่ว่างรองรับท่านและก็ท่านที่สนใจรับชมทางบ้านด้วยนะครับชั่วโมงในระหว่างที่รอเวลาเพื่อที่guest speaker moderator ขึ้นสู่เวทีเสวนาผมขออนุญาตนำเรียนประวัติของท่านผู้ช่วยศาสตราจารย์ดร.ณัชพลสิริสวัสดิ์ซึ่งวันนี้ท่านได้ให้เกียรติกับมหาจุฬานะครับท่าน เพื่อที่จะเป็นผู้ดำเนินการเสวนากับในหัวข้อ Buddhist Wisdom in the Tipitaka Coping with Global Crisis นะครับในวันนี้ท่านผู้ช่วยศาสตราจารย์ดร.ณัชพลศิริสวัสดิ์ท่านมาจากภาควิชาภาษาตะวันออกคณะอักษรศาสตร์จุฬาลงกรณ์มหาวิทยาลัยนะครับและก็จบการศึกษาอักษรศาสตร์บัณฑิตภาคภาษาไทยจุฬาลงกรณ์มหาวิทยาลัยอักษรศาสตร์มหาบัณฑิตภาษาบาลีและสันสกฤตจุฬาลงกรณ์มหาวิทยาลัยและก็จบ PhD บาลีและสันสกฤตจุฬาลงกรณ์มหาวิทยาลัยและก็จบ PhD ครับผม
And now may I take this chance to introduce our honorably moderator. And he has already arrived here. Assistant Professor Dr. Natapon Sirit Sawat from the Faculty of Art, Chulalongkorn University. South Asian Languages Section, Department of Eastern Languages, Faculty of Arts, Chulalongkorn University. He has specialty and interest in many Sanskrit and Tibetan languages, Buddhist Sanskrit literature, manuscripts, epigraphy, and Buddhist arts. He graduated PhD in Buddhist Studies from Ludwig Maximilian University 2019, and Master of Art in Pali and Sanskrit, Chulalongkorn University, and also Bachelor of Art in Thai, Chulalongkorn University. And today he has here to honor us to be the moderator for this seminar.
จากคุณวุฒิของท่านอาจารย์ก็จะทราบว่าท่านมีความเชี่ยวชาญในหลายด้านนะครับในวันนี้ความเชี่ยวชาญที่เป็นที่น่าสนใจในสังคมก็คือท่านจะมีความเชี่ยวชาญพิเศษในด้านภาษาสันสกฤตและทิเบตวรรณกรรมพุทธศาสนาสันสกฤตการชำระคัมภีร์ต้นฉบับการศึกษาเปรียบเทียบวรรณคดีพุทธศาสนาภาษาสันสกฤตและอีกหลายอย่างนะครับอันนี้เป็นความเชี่ยวชาญพิเศษของท่านอาจารย์นะครับซึ่งจะเป็นผู้ดำเนินการเสวนาในภาคบ่ายนี้ครับผม
As Dr. Santat Jantatong already mentioned, our moderator today, he has a very specialist in many things. As I already mentioned that he's a professional in Sanskrit, Tibetan languages, and also Buddhist Sanskrit literatures, manuscript, and he received the title Dr. Phil in Buddhist Studies with honors from LMU Munich in 2019 as well.
นอกจากนั้นแล้วนะครับภาควิชาในความรับผิดชอบของอาจารย์นะครับสำหรับนิสิตนักศึกษาที่กำลังสนใจเกี่ยวกับภาควิชาที่เกี่ยวกับบาลีสันสกฤตก็ดีนะครับคัมภีร์โบราณอะไรต่างๆก็ดีท่านอาจารย์รัชพลท่านก็ยังมีหน้าที่มีผลงานความรับผิดชอบในรายวิชาต่างๆผมขอยกตัวอย่างนะครับเช่นเรื่องเทพกรณำอินเดียอันนี้ก็เป็นผลงานหนึ่งของอาจารย์นะครับอารยธรรมอินเดียอันนี้ก็เป็นเรื่องที่น่าสนใจเกี่ยวกับพุทธศาสนาและในสายของ Buddhist Study ด้วยนะครับแล้วก็อารยธรรมอินเดียในสังคมไทยนะครับผลงานต่างๆเหล่านี้ท่านอาจารย์นัชพลได้เป็นผู้มีความเชี่ยวชาญในส่วนนี้ด้วยนะครับอันนี้ก็ขอนำเรียนให้ท่านทั้งหลายได้รับทราบเพื่อที่จะเป็นข้อมูลความสนใจในการรับฟังในวันนี้นะครับนอกจากนั้นท่านอาจารย์ก็ยังได้รับเครื่องราชอิสริยยศชั้นจตุรถาภรณ์ช้างเผือกด้วยนะครับนี่เป็นผลงานและเป็นประวัติคร่าวๆของท่านอาจารย์ท่านผู้ช่วยศาสตราจารย์ดร.ณัชพลศิริสวัสดิ์นะครับก็ยังมีเวลาที่จะเริ่มการเสวนาจึงขออนุญาตนำเรียนข้อมูลเบื้องต้นในส่วนของท่านผู้ดำเนินรายการในวันนี้นะครับซึ่งมหาวิทยาลัยมหาจุฬาลงกรณราชวิทยาลัยได้รับเกียรติอย่างสูงจากท่านโมเดเลเตอร์และพร้อมทั้งเกสต์สปีกเกอร์ทุกท่านขณะนี้รอท่าน most venerable พันเตปิยรัตนะนะครับท่านก็คาดว่าท่านกำลังจะเดินทางมานะครับก็ท่านอยู่ที่faculty of Buddhism นะครับและก็มีท่านศาสตราจารย์ดร.แฟรงค์จาก International Buddhist Study College ท่านก็เดินทางมาถึงแล้วนะครับอย่างไรก็ตามเพื่อประโยชน์สูงสุดในการให้ข้อมูลกับทางมหาลัยนะครับก็ขอนิมนต์กับนิมนต์และก็เรียนเชิญท่านได้เข้าสู่ระบบการลงทะเบียนเข้าร่วมงานพร้อมด้วยการสแกน QR code ลงทะเบียนจากนั้นในระหว่างการเสวนาและในท้ายรายการก็ขอท่านได้ทำแบบประเมินนะครับเพื่อที่จะได้รับเกียรติบัตรนะครับในปีนี้ทางแม่งานโดยสถาบันพระไตรปิฎกศึกษาก็ได้มีการมอบเกียรติบัตรสำหรับผู้เข้าร่วมงานเสวนาในครั้งนี้ด้วยนะครับก็ขอท่านทั้งหลายอย่าลืมสแกนQR code เพื่อทำแบบประเมินด้วยนะครับเพื่อให้ท่านได้ดาวน์โหลดวุฒิบัตรออนไลน์ครับผม
For the most benefit of our MCU University, please all the participants, please scan the QR code and after the seminar is finished today, please don't forget to do the evaluation form. You could download the online certificates from that you attend this academic seminar.
ขณะนี้ท่านผู้ช่วยศาสตราจารย์ดร.พระปิยรัตนะนะครับจากคณะพุทธศาสตร์มจร.ก็ท่านก็ได้เมตตาเดินทางมาถึงแล้วนะครับคณะวิทยากร
And now most venerable Assistant Professor Dr. Prapiya Ratana from the Buddhist Studies, Buddhist Faculty MCU has arrived. As well as Professor Dr. Frank J. Hoffman from the International Buddhist Studies College at MCU.
ขออนุญาตประชาสัมพันธ์กับอาราธนานิมนต์นะครับสำหรับคุณเจ้าที่เดินทางมาถึงแล้วได้เมตตาได้นั่งที่นั่งแถวแรกก่อนนะครับเพื่อจะให้ดูสวยงามในการถ่ายภาพก็ดีและคณะผู้บริหารคณาจารย์เจ้าหน้าที่และแขกผู้มีเกียรติที่ทยอยเดินทางมาก็ขอเชิญนิมนต์และเชิญนะครับที่รองรับบนเก้าอี้เพียงพอสำหรับท่านที่กำลังจะเดินทางมาและก็เพื่อความสวยงามในการบันทึกภาพและก็เพื่อความเป็นเอกภาพความเรียบร้อยของการจัดงานเสวนาภาคบ่ายในวันนี้ในเวทีหนึ่งครับผม
Please for the participants who has already arrived at the theater C, the classroom study building. If you could please move forward to the front seats for the better look of all the photos, please. We have a very spacious seats here, so if you could please move to the front.
ในนามสถาบันพระไตรปิฎกศึกษาต้องขอกราบขอบพระคุณท่านพระมหาสุรศักดิ์ปัจจันตเสโนรองอธิการบดีฝ่ายกิจการต่างประเทศเป็นอย่างสูงนะครับท่านได้กรุณาเอื้อเฟื้อในส่วนของเชิญนิสิตเข้ามา นิสิตธรรมทูตนะครับเข้ามาร่วมงานในวันนี้เป็นอย่างสูงนะครับพร้อมด้วยความเมตตาอนุเคราะห์ความการออกไนงานโดยท่านรองอธิการบดีฝ่ายวิชาการรวมทั้งคณะผู้บริหารจากสถาบันพระไตรปิฎกจากสถาบันพระไตรปิฎกและจากกองวิชาการและส่วนงานที่เกี่ยวข้องด้วยนะครับในนามแม่งานสถาบันพระไตรปิฎกศึกษาก็ต้องกราบขอบพระคุณท่านทุกส่วนงานเป็นอย่างสูงนะครับ
On the behalf of Tipitaka Study Institute, we would like to thank you, all executives, all administrators and lecturers, and everyone who joined this seminar, academic seminar today.
ขณะนี้ท่านguest speaker อีกท่านหนึ่งก็ได้เดินทางมาถึงก็คือท่านดร.สมัทธาราชปักษาจากภาควิชามนุษยศาสตร์มหาวิทยาลัยมหิดลครับ
And now our guest speakers, another one has arrived. Dr. Samantha Rajapaksa from the Faculty of Humanities, Mahidol Universities. Please welcome him.
ยังพอมีเวลานะครับสำหรับที่ท่านที่อยู่ด้านนอกและก็ท่านที่ได้รับชมผ่าน MCU TV ก็ดีถ้าท่านสนใจในการรับชมเพื่อรับฟังการเสวนาองค์ความรู้เกี่ยวกับพุทธปัญญาในพระไตรปิฎกต่อการรับมือวิกฤตโลกนะครับซึ่งจะเริ่มในเวลา 13 นาฬิกาตรงนะครับก่อนที่ท่านจะเข้ามาภายในห้องประชุมนี้ก็จะมีนิทรรศการและก็มีการให้ท่านได้สแกน QR Code ลงทะเบียนเพื่อเป็นข้อมูลนำเรียนท่านได้สามารถที่จะดาวน์โหลดเกียรติบัตรตอนท้ายรายการนะครับ
And before we officially start our academic seminar at 1 p.m., we do have some time, so please, in front of the theater seat, if you are interested in, please see our exhibitions. You can also register online for anyone here who present on site or who joined on the online. You can download and scan QR code to download online certificates.
ก่อนถึงเวลา 13 นาฬิการะหว่างนี้นะครับก็ท่านผู้บริหารมหาวิทยาลัยรวมทั้งท่าน guest speaker และ moderator ท่านก็ได้ทักทายปราศัยเป็นการสนทนาปราศัยต้อนรับนะครับในฐานะที่ท่านได้ให้เกียรติมหาวิทยาลัยในการร่วมเป็นแขกผู้มีเกียรติในการมาเป็น guest speaker ก็ดีเป็น moderator ก็ดีนะครับก็เป็นความร่วมมือที่น่าประทับใจนะครับก็ต้องขอกราบขอบพระคุณรวมถึงก็ต้องนับถือน้ำจิตน้ำใจของทีมงานผู้จัดงานโดยเฉพาะอย่างยิ่งในส่วนของกองวิชาการก็ดีสถาบันพระไตรปิฎกก็ดีนะครับรวมถึงนิสิตธรรมทูตนะครับอันนี้ต้องกราบขอบพระคุณเป็นพิเศษที่ท่านได้เสียสละและก็เข้าร่วมงานให้ความร่วมมือกับงานระดับโลกของมหาลัยที่จัดในปีนี้นะครับงานวิสาขโลกในปีนี้ซึ่งในส่วนของการเสวนาภาคบ่ายเวทีหนึ่งก็ยังมีงานเสวนาอีกเวทีหนึ่งนะครับก็คือเวทีที่2นั้นจะเป็นส่วนของการเสวนาพุทธปัญญากับการรับมือวิกฤตโลกจัดโดยสถาบันวิจัยพุทธศาสตร์ณห้องประชุมเธียเตอร์ B508 ถึง 509นำเสนอผลงานวิชาการโดยนักวิชาการจากสถาบันต่างๆนะครับผู้ทรงคุณวุฒิในเวทีที่2นั้นก็จะประกอบไปด้วยรองศาสตราจารย์ดร.สุวินทร์ลักษัตริย์จากมหาวิทยาลัยมหามกุฏราชวิทยาลัยและท่านรองศาสตราจารย์ดร.สานุมหัฒนาดุลจาก International Buddhist Study College นะครับมจล.รวมถึงมีพิธีกรโดยท่านอาจารย์ดร.ลำพองกรมกุลศูนย์อาเซียนศึกษามหาวิทยาลัยมหาจุฬาราชวิทยาลัยอันนี้ก็ในส่วนของเวทีที่2นะครับสำหรับท่านที่เลือกสนใจในการรับชมการเสวนาในเวทีที่2นั้นนะครับ
On the behalf of the Tipitaka Study Institute who organized this academic seminar, we would like to thank you for all participants and also who support this academic seminar, including academic affairs, all the lead monks, scholars, as well as the organized team from Tipitaka Study Institute to have organized this great seminars today. And in this afternoon, we do have our panel 1, but we also have the panel 2. The seminar as the same Buddhist wisdom coping with the global crisis. At the classroom building, Theater B 508 and 509. And the keynote speakers over there, we do have the Assistant Professor Dr. Suwin Raksat from Mahachulalongkornrajvidyalaya Buddhist University, as well as the Associate Professor Dr. Sanu Mahathanadun from IBSC Mahachulalongkornrajvidyalaya Universities, and the moderator Dr. Lampong Klomkun from Asian Studies Center of MCU.
และขออนุญาตนำเรียนอีกเรื่องหนึ่งนะครับก็คือเพื่อความปลอดภัยสูงสุดในมาตรการป้องกันการแพร่ระบาดของโควิด -19 ถ้าเป็นไปได้ก็อยากจะให้พระคุณเจ้าท่านผู้บริหารคณาจารย์พระคุณเจ้าและผู้ร่วมงานทุกท่านได้สวมแมสและก็ล้างมือด้วยเจลแอลกอฮอล์ซึ่งบริเวณหน้างานก็จะมีบริการท่านอยู่นะครับเพื่อความปลอดภัยเพราะขณะนี้การแพร่ระบาดของโควิด -19 ก็ยังคงมีอยู่เพราะนั้นเพื่อความปลอดภัยในสุขภาพของท่านและก็เพื่อการให้ความร่วมมือกับทางมหาวิทยาลัยและทางรัฐบาลก็ขอรบกวนท่านได้สวมแมสตลอดเวลาณที่ห้องประชุมแห่งนี้นะครับผม
And for your best safety, please wear the face mask all the time. Yeah, during the seminars here, and please sanitize your hand to be the best way to protect the COVID-19 pandemic.
บัดนี้ได้เวลาเป็นการสมควรขอกับรัตนานิมนต์และขอเรียนเชิญท่านผู้ดำเนินรายการผู้ช่วยศาสตราจารย์ดร.ณัชพลศิริสวัสดิ์ในฐานะเป็นโมเดเลเตอร์และพร้อมด้วยท่านผู้ช่วยศาสตราจารย์ดร.พระปิยรัตนะจากคณะพุทธศาสตร์มจร.ท่านศาสตราจารย์ดร.แฟรงค์เจฮอฟแมนจาก International Buddhist Study College พร้อมด้วยดร.สมัทธาราชปัชชา from Faculty of Humanity Mindon University ขึ้นสู่เวทีเพื่อที่จะร่วมวงเสวนาวิชาการในหัวข้อ Buddhist Wisdom in the Tipitaka Coping with Global Crisis เป็นลำดับสืบต่อไปครับผม
And now may I take the great opportunity to invite all the professional keynote speakers as well as the moderator, Assistant Professor Dr. Nachapon Sirisawat, Assistant Professor Dr. Venerable Piyaratana Thero, Dr. Samantha Rajapaksha, Professor Dr. Frank Huffman. To officially start the seminar, please take the floor.
เมื่อท่านวิทยากรผู้ทรงเกียรติผู้ทรงคุณวุฒิรวมทั้งท่านมอนิเตอร์ได้ขึ้นสู่เวทีแล้วนะครับท่านผู้ช่วยศาสตราจารย์ดร.ณัชพลท่านก็จะได้แนะนำวิทยากรที่จะร่วมวงเสวนาในวันนี้เป็นลำดับไปนะครับขอเรียนเชิญนิมนต์ท่านได้นั่งบนเก้าอี้เป็นตั้งแต่ตอนหน้าไปนะครับเพื่อความสวยงามในการถ่ายภาพก็ดีนะครับขอเรียนเชิญท่านที่อยู่ด้านหลังนะครับ
After all the keynote speakers has arrived and take up the stage, our moderator, Assistant Professor Dr. Natapon Sirisawat, will introduce all the keynote speakers to everyone.
เดี๋ยวรอสักครู่นะครับท่านโมเดอเรเตอร์เดี๋ยวท่านก็ขึ้นมาเดี๋ยวท่านจะได้แนะนำวิทยากรนะครับการเสวนาวิชาการในภาค 13 นาฬิกาในวันนี้เป็นหัวข้อย่อยของงานหลักนะครับใน เนื่องในพิธีเฉลิมฉลองวันวิสาขโลกวันสำคัญสากลของโลกครั้งที่ 18 ประจำปีพ.ศ. 2566 จัดโดยมหาวิทยาลัยมหาจุฬาลงกรณราชวิทยาลัยตำบลลำไทรอำเภอวังน้อยจังหวัดพระนครศรีอยุธยาวันพุธที่ 31 พฤษภาคม 2566 ก็ยังมีงานต่อเนื่องไปนะครับก็ในระหว่างนี้ก็เป็นการรับองค์ความรู้ในเชิงวิชาการนะครับซึ่งภาคบ่ายนี้ของเวทีที่ 1 ก็ท่านผู้ช่วยศาสตราจารย์ดร.ณัชพลศิริสวัสดิ์ในฐานะผู้ดำเนินการเสวนาก็จะแนะนำประวัติโดยคร่าวๆของวิทยากรผู้ทรงคุณวุฒินะครับจากนั้นท่านก็จะได้เข้าสู่หัวข้อการเสวนาพุทธปัญญาในพระไตรปิฎกกับการรับมือวิกฤตโลกนะครับตามหัวข้อใหญ่ของมหาวิทยาลัยที่กำหนดเป็นธีมงานในปีนี้นะครับ
And the program of International Academic Seminar today is a part of the activities on the occasion of the 18th United Nations Days of Vesak celebration 2023, organized here at Mahachulalongkornrajvidyalaya University, Lamsai Subdistrict, Wang Noi District, Ayutthaya Province, Thailand. And today date is the May 31st, 2023.
ในขณะนี้ขออนุญาตรอท่านวิทยากรอีกท่านหนึ่งนะครับจากนั้นก็จะยกเวทีนี้ให้อาจารย์ณัฐพลดำเนินการไปครับผม
And now we are waiting for our keynote speakers to be here. And after that, we will give Assistant Professor Dr. Natapon Sirisawat to take the stage.
ในระหว่างนี้ก็ต้องขออนุญาตกราบเรียนและก็นำเรียนท่านผู้พระคุณเจ้าที่เคารพและก็ท่านผู้บริหารคณาจารย์ท่านผู้มีเกียรติทุกท่านเพื่อประโยชน์ในการรับเกียรติบัตรออนไลน์นะครับขอความกรุณานิมนต์ท่านอย่าลืมขอความร่วมมือและก็ให้ท่านกรอกแบบฟอร์มเพื่อจะรับเกียรติบัตรออนไลน์ในระหว่างการเสวนาในภาคบ่ายนี้นะครับผม
And now for the best results of this academic seminar, please may I remind you again, and would be appreciated if all the participants, administrators, and all the students, monks, or anyone who participates here, please scan QR codes, and also please give the evaluation online after the seminars end today to download your online certificates as well.
นอกจากท่านสามารถรับชมการรับชมและก็รับฟังการเสวนาในภาคบ่ายนี้หน้าห้องประชุมเธียเตอร์โซน C แห่งนี้แล้วท่านก็ยังสามารถรับชมการเสวนาครั้งนี้ผ่านทาง MCU TV นะครับก็ขอท่านทั้งหลายได้ลงทะเบียนแล้วก็ทำแบบประเมินเพื่อที่จะเป็นข้อมูลสำคัญเป็นเกียรติคุณเกียรติบัตรของท่านครั้งหนึ่งในการเข้าร่วมงานในระดับโลกครั้งนี้นะครับเนื่องในงานเฉลิมฉลองวันวิสาขะโลกวันสำคัญสากลของโลกครั้งที่18ในปีนี้ครับผม
For all participants who could present on site at here, the Theater C, at the study building, and you can also participate online via the MCU TV. Whether you're here on site at the theater or participate online, you could also download and scan QR code to download the online certificates to witness that you are part of this Buddhist Wisdom Coping with the Global Crisis academic seminar on the occasion of the 18th United Nations Day of Vesak celebration, 2023.
ในนามสถาบันพระไตรปิฎกศึกษาและคณะผู้จัดงานขอกราบขอบพระคุณและก็ขอขอบคุณท่านผู้อำนวยรายการและคณะวิทยากรบัดนี้กระผมดร.สันทัศน์จันททองพร้อมด้วยดร.พิชยานันท์พงษ์ไพบูลย์ขอยกเวทีให้ท่านอาจารย์ณัชพลดำเนินการเสวนาเป็นลำดับสืบไปขอขอบพระคุณครับ
On the behalf of Tipitaka Study Institute, organized seminar committee, and all the participants, now I am Dr. Pichanan Pongpaibun, together with Dr. Santat Jantatong, would like to give the stage to our moderators and also the keynote speakers. Please.
ไม่ดัง
ลครับฮัลโหลครับโอเคครับครับกับนมัสการพระคุณเจ้าทุกรูปนะครับแล้วก็สวัสดีท่านแขกผู้มีเกียรติทุกท่านนะครับ Good afternoon all the venerable monks and also the distinguished guests. Welcome all of you to the International Academic Seminar on Buddhist Wisdom, coping with the global crisis on the occasions of the 18th United Nations Days of Vesak celebration 2023. And here is the Vanu from the Mahachulalongkornrajvidyalaya University. Welcome all of you again in the afternoon sections. And now we have 4 of us here. And I will be the moderators of this event, and thank you. Also, I would like to also thank Dr. Santat Chantathong and Dr. Pichayanan Phongpaibun to introduce my background. My name is Assistant Professor Nachapon Sirisawat from South Asian Languages Section, Department of Eastern Languages, Faculty of Arts, Chulalongkorn University. Today we have 3 honorable speakers to talk on the topic about Buddhist wisdom in the Tipitaka to cope with the global crisis. So the topic is very interesting today, that we have like some treasury on the Buddhist doctrine or the Dharma or the Buddhist Dharma that can found in the Tipitaka or the Buddhist canon. And today our speaker will seek out all of this and to introduce us what kinds of Dharma or the Buddhist teaching or something like that is very important to cope with the global crisis. So our speakers consist of Assistant Professor Dr. Piyaratana from the Faculties of Buddhism, Mahachulalongkornrajvidyalaya University, and Dr. Frank Hoffman from IBSC, Mahachulalongkornrajvidyalaya University, and Dr. Samatha Rajapaksa from Department of Humanities, Mahidol University. Okay, the first speaker here, Assistant Professor Dr. Piyaratana, who has received a bachelor degree with the first class in Pali Special from University of Peradeniya, Sri Lanka, and a Master of Arts degree from the Buddhist and Pali University in Sri Lanka and Mahachulalongkornrajvidyalaya University. He earned his doctorate degree in Buddhist studies from the same university, and he served as the temporary lecturer at the Department of the Pali and Buddhist Studies University of Peradeniya in Sri Lanka for 2 years, and served as the visiting lecturer at the International Buddhist College, Hat Yai, for several years. He also the director of the BA English program at the Faculty of Buddhism, Mahachulalongkornrajvidyalaya University, and also the abbot of Fasian Buddhist Cultural Center in Sri Lanka. He has many publications. For example, the expectations from Sikhalowatha Sutta in the social concept. So, Sikhalowatha Sutta, how to strike a perfect balance in society. And he have also the Shan and Enlightenment, a Sinhalese translation, Theravada Buddhism, the teaching material, and the essay on the Buddhist studies, and also the Visuddhimagga studies. The manual of the Sutta Nipata and the word by word translations of the Sutta Nipata. And he has written more than 40 academic articles in Sinhalese, Pali, and English languages. So here is the first speaker. The second speaker is Professor Dr. Frank J. Hoffman, the lecturer from the International Buddhist Studies College, or IBSC, at the Mahachulalongkornrajvidyalaya University, and he also the visiting scholar associate in South Asia's center at University of Pennsylvania during the summer. So Dr. Hoffman received the PhD in philosophy of religion at King's College, University London, MA in philosophy at the University of Hawaii, and BA in philosophy at the University of Missouri, St. Louis. Professor Hoffman has 126 published items, including books, book chapters, journals, articles, encyclopedia articles, and book reviews. His 4 books are Rationality and Mind in Early Buddhism, Introduction to Early Buddhism, Breaking Barriers, and the Pali Buddhism. And Dr. Hoffman was an NEH Summer Institute participant at Howard University, Columbia University, University of Hawaii, and he also participated at the University of California, Los Angeles. He taught the courses found in Rotary grants for university teachers in India, in philosophy at the University of Madras, in China in philosophy at Peking University, and in the School of Philosophy in Wuhan University. And during 2019, Dr. Hoffman published 5 papers, 2 in Thailand, and 1 in Hong Kong, and 2 in Vietnam. And he has given a presentations at Siam Society. So now Professor Hoffman is an associate editor of the journal in Asian philosophy. So he is very specialized in philosophy. And the third speaker here, Professor Samanta Rajapaksa. He is a lecturer at the faculty's member Department of Humanities from the Faculty of Social Science at Humanity Mahidol University. So he earned a PhD in Pali language at the University of Peradeniya and BA degree in majoring in Pali language, University of Peradeniya. And he also expertise in the Theravada Pali palm leaf manuscript tradition, Pali textual criticism, and the Pali primary text and their classical commentary. So one of his recent published academic paper argue about the Tamlana palm leaf manuscript textual traditions Rasa Wahini, right? That older than the extant Theravada palm leaf manuscript traditions. And he also produced an edition for the Pali Putthapisek, which is the Siamese Pali text with several palm leaf manuscript versions. And some of his 4th papers are textual traditions of Putthapisek in the Siamese Pali literature, and textual traditions of the Pali Rasavahini in the Siamese Pali literatures, and interpolate texts in the Mathura Savahini Lankadipa. Okay, here is all the biography of all speakers today. So I think that we gain a lot of things today. But for our topic, right? For our topic today is about Buddhist wisdom, and it's focused on the Buddhist wisdom in Tipitaka or the Pali canon. So how is this cope with the global crisis? So I may have some introduce a little bit about the current world situation that I think that now the current world have confront with the multitude problems, right? And the problem is caused by both natures and human, right? So we have like the nature brings about the disease, you know, like COVID-19 or SARS or Ebola and unexpected natural disasters, and also like a global warming or something like that. So, and for the human actions, we also have like a problem of the full political conflict or resource exploitations and regional wars that leads to some of the refugee crisis and society, essential resource, economic crisis, something like that. So I think that Buddhism can confront this global crisis and can be applied by the principles of the Dharma in the Buddhism. So at the first round, I would like each speaker to talk about what do you think about the Dharma or some Buddhist wisdom that we can find, especially in the Tipitaka, that can be coped with this kind of current crisis in the world. So maybe I will invite as Assistant Professor Dr. Piyaratana, first speaker, please.
My humble respect to the most honorable Achan Sambun Buddhikaro, the Deputy Rector of the Academic Affairs and the Director of Tipitaka Studies, and most venerable sirs and dear friends in the Dhamma, and my colleagues, those who are going to present on this specific topic today, and also the moderator. So thank you very much for giving this opportunity to discuss something about the topic related to Buddhist Tipitaka studies in coping with global crisis. I hope that all the venerables mostly are representing those who are going to do the missionary work in overseas related to Dhammaduta College. So I hope that it is very necessary for you to improve your skill in English language. So throughout this presentation, you have to listen and try to understand. So if there is any questions, of course, you are welcome to ask. So my topic is that impact of Buddhism on social conflict and conflict resolutions. So very relevant with nowadays, as we, the disciple of the Buddha, that when we go through the Tripitaka, we can find out many informations or many relevant materials or the resources about global crisis. It is not a new topic, but even time of the Buddha, there were various conflicts within the society, and Buddha has given some definitions and also some interpretations and solutions to resolve those conflicts. So I think that the topic of this international seminar is very necessary and timely theme. So I wish I convey my thanks to those who have selected this very significant topic. So when we talk about the social conflict, today we all see that the whole world, we cannot assume that skip any country, but there is some conflict throughout the world. So when we talk about, but the conflict, the situation is that the serious more than ever before in the history, as we know that, as we observe, and very, not only like, we cannot, as I said, that not only the developing country, but the countries already developed, there are some type of conflict. So we cannot skip, or we cannot say that this country has no any conflict. At least there is some minor conflict within any country. So you can see that the conflict between India and Pakistan over the border of Kashmir, the Iran-Iraq war, and the involvement of America on this conflict, the America and Al-Qaeda conflict, the conflict in Zimbabwe between the blacks and the whites, Israel-Palestine war, the apartheid problems in South Africa, the conflict between the Nepal government and the Maoists, and North and South Korean conflict over the boundaries, the conflict between the Americans and the Red Indians, the conflict between government of Spain and the ETA separatists, the power struggle in Chile are some of the world conflict today, and still undenied power struggle between Russia and Ukraine can be considered as the latest crisis to join the world crisis, the conflict between political leaders and civil societies in Sri Lanka. So I am from Sri Lanka, I never skip even Sri Lanka. We are having such political and civil society. last few months we experienced a very serious issue. So 20th century was saw the highest crime murders committed in the world. That is the highest number of the murders in the 20th century. More than 120 million people died of crimes and terrorist activities during this century. It is very sensitive issue that the most of people who died because of the crimes or the conflict, they had nothing to do with the conflict. It means that those are very innocent people. The conflict is struggling maybe because of power. Two groups, but those who died because of the conflict, they are the civilians. They had nothing to do with the conflict. So that is the most sensitive issue. And also like when we go through the conflict, nature of the conflict, we can classify the conflict as micro conflict and macro conflict. So micro conflict are the clash of personalities in the society or among a small group of people, and the macro conflicts are national problems, so can also go beyond that, which will affect all the people in that nation, so with different nations. The conflict among the governments also come under the macro conflict. So at certain instance of conflict can be categorized as difference as follows, or inter-nation conflict. Inter-nation conflict, it can be the conflict within same nations. Conflict within same nations. So I don't want to say that, but some country are having, we can claim it is one country, but inside that country the people are struggling because of the power. And also international conflict. Right now we are experiencing the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. So we can categorize as international conflict. So whatever the conflict is, the destructions and damage done by these conflicts are immense. And during 1945 to 1992, there had been 163 wars fought in different countries. And as a result of this, approximately 23 million people lost their lives. The most dangerous of this is that the 4 times more than the army, normal civilians died. So that's why I said that those who involved with conflict may be limited number of the people, but those who died because of the conflict, those are very innocent civilians. Okay. So, but it is also interesting that those who are involving with conflict, they try to justify. They are fighting for something for the betterment of the society. As you know that Adolf Hitler, when he was fighting, he claimed that for the movement of the society, conflict is needed. And some are saying that very necessary, conflict is necessary for the progress of the society. Without conflict, there is no progress. So that is the reason, like well-known political leaders, those who did such crimes like even the Pol Pot, of course, when he was killing like innocent people, it is for the progress of the society. Even the Karl Marx, once he stated that without conflict, no development of the society. So they have seen, like when the Al-Qaeda attacked America, they said that it is against the Christianity. It is called the Holy War. So we cannot justify like that, saying it is Holy War, anything that, so no any conflict can claim as such innocence or such for the progress of the society. So however that those who engage in the conflict, they have different interpretations, something away from the reality. And also like when you go through the causes of conflict, so it is very interesting discourse. I would like to point out here. One is that in the Digha Nikaya, Sakkapanya Sutta. So I hope that Venerable could be familiar. The questions of Sakra. Venerable, Digha Nikaya in English we call long discourse of the Buddha. So in Digha Nikaya, Sakkapanya Sutta, there is another sutta in Majjhima Nikaya, Mahadukkhakkhandha Sutta, the discourse of great mass of suffering. Mahadukkhakkhandha Sutta. So those true suttas are very significant. Of course, there are plenty of suttas, those are very relevant with the social conflict. So in the Sakkapanya Sutta, the chief of the god or the Sakra, he was asking from the Buddha, people would like to live with the happiness. People would like to live with the peace, but there is no peace. What is the reason? What is the cause? Why there is no peace? Parents fight with the children. Children fight with the parents. Religious leaders are fighting with the followers. Followers are fighting with the religious leaders. So everyone talk about harmony, but there is no harmony. So what is the cause? What is the reason? Then the Buddha has given very significant interpretations or very significant definition. What are the reasons of social conflict? It is because of jealousy and avarice, ichcha, mana. So because of these two reasons, people are struggling. Of course, jealousy. And there is big competition in the world, right? Everyone struggle to become the most powerful country in the world. And we can see that some country, they are doing such nuclear test or trying to figure out the most powerful atomic bombs. For what sake? For the sake of human beings? No. It is because of the competitions. They want to claim that we are the most powerful country in the world. So it is because of the jealousy and avarice. And also many other cases like in another discourse Buddha has pointed out, it is because of anti-social things are done by people. Because of four broad thoughts the man has in its mind, such as chanda means the desire, and those are hatred, bhaya, fear, and the moha, delusion. Because of these four factors, people are struggling or making conflict. And also in the Mahadukkhakkhandha Sutta, all the conflict, we can give 1,000 definitions. We are fighting because of this. But conclusions can be, it is because of the sensual pleasure. Because of the sensual pleasure. So sensual pleasure as the cause, sensual pleasure as the source, sensual pleasure as the basis. The cause being simply sensual pleasure. Kings quarrel with the kings. That is very true. Kings means the two countries are fighting because of sensual pleasure. It can be by, as we know that the sensual pleasure, that what I satisfy, then I try to claim that it is mine, it is myself, and that is my soul. So then struggle or the conflict are starting. So this in Mahadukkhakkhandha Sutta, the discourse of the great mass of suffering. And also like in the Magandhya Sutta of Sutta Nipata, the Buddha was saying that the Magandhya was asking what are the reasons of having such social conflict, or what are the reasons for people are fighting. It is because of the sanya. Sanya means the perceptions, and the ditti means the view. Because of two factors, people are having conflict. So where there is the perceptions, we make such concept, then I believe that everybody should follow me. But unfortunately, you are not following me. So I try to convince you to follow me. So then the struggle, fighting, or the quarrels are starting. Quarrels are starting. You remember that when the Buddha was living at Jetavana, once occasion like Devadatta, Venerable Devadatta tried to convince the Buddha to accept it 5 principles, or he made 5 proposals to the Buddha. Buddha rejected. What happened? Then the Venerable Devadatta, he found 500 disciples of the Buddha to separate the Buddhist order into 2 groups. That was the first dispute among the Sangha. It is because of Devadatta had such conceptual idea that the monk should be like this, but Buddha rejected. So when Buddha rejected, then he made his own decisions. So this is how concept or the view lead the society to have such conflict. And also in very specific discourse, you can see in Digha Nikaya, Agganya Sutta. Agganya Sutta is we call the discourse of the birth of social order. It is, or some are saying this sutta is very specific because of Buddhist cosmology. Buddhist cosmology. So in the Agganya Sutta there are three terms. One is the addictions. Addictions means lolatam. And imitations. Imitation means dittanugati. We like to follow one another. When someone is doing something, we like to follow. So what is the people imitating others. So the conflict arises. And also the third one is yugaggaha. When there is addictions and imitations, then the people are struggling or fighting for something. So that is called yugaggaha. So this in this very discourse Buddha has expounded the matter of the social conflict. You remember that at the beginning people, of course, they were very colorful, very intelligent, but since they started to imitate others, means like when one has stolen something, other people did the same. So the quarrels, conflict arose in that particular society. And also it is also in the one very specific discourse in Sutta Nipata, Kalaha Vivada Sutta. Kalaha means the quarrels and Vivada means the dispute. What is the reasons of quarrels and dispute? Then the Buddha was saying that these due to someone or something dear that quarrels and dispute originated. So when I like something, you are not the same. We have different interests, we have different interpretations, we have different intentions. So when I try to figure out what is my interest, what is my intention, but we are not ready to accept, then there is some conflict arise. So these are, and one more things that is the poverty. Because of the poverty, of course, we have seen that the recent issue in Sri Lanka, if you remember that last time, many people started to fight against the government. They didn't have enough food, they didn't have enough the fuel, gasoline, so many things. So then they against the government. So finally our president, he had to escape. He had to run away from the country because of people struggle for these things. So that is one also like a Chakravarti Sihanada Sutta. That is very the discourse related to the universal monarch. The Buddha was saying that that is the political authority. That is the right of the political leaders to take care of the people. If there is no such taking care of the people, we have seen such country like Zimbabwe, some other countries, like when there is nothing, they started to steal very openly. Then the older society, they did the same. And this like the source of the social conflict. And then still I have time, sir? Maybe a few more minutes. And the conflict resolutions, it is very interesting from the Buddhist teaching that Buddha didn't stop by saying these are the conflict, but also Buddha has given the solutions to resolve those conflict, right? So in case of the Buddha didn't accept any type of conflict, no matter that the conflict, whether it is macro or micro, but Buddha didn't accept any type of conflict. If one occasion, if you read like Udana Pali, Buddha was saying that the Buddha prevented his disciple even breaking the branch of the tree. If you get benefit from a tree, don't break branch of that tree. So this is how Buddha is concerning about environment. So nothing to talk about the human beings. Everyone desire to happiness. Everyone wishes the happiness, right? In Dhammapada, you are very familiar. Sukha kamani bhutani. Sukha kamani bhutani. In another occasion, Buddha said that Sukha kamani bhutani sabbe bhuta dukkha patikula. All the human beings, they rejected the suffering. They are not desire. They are not willing to have the suffering, but all desire for the happiness. So, for the sake of one's own happiness, should not do any harm. So that is what Buddha, very beginning that many discourses. If you remember the first advice given by the Buddha, I mean, Ovada Patimokha. I think Venables know that the first 20 years of the Buddha, there was no Vinaya Pitaka, right? So when there was no Vinaya Pitaka, the monk, they could behave very nicely because of Ovada Patimokha. Remember Ovada Patimokha, Kanti Paramang Tapo Titikka, Kanti, tolerations, right? That is the highest mentality one could develop, right? So, when in that the same instance I say, na samano hoti parang vihetayanto. So, the disciple of the Buddha, they never make any quarrels for the sake of their own happiness. They do not make any dispute, right? So, that is Buddha was expecting. And also, like, even though there is a quarrel, it is Buddha, it is like in the ancient period, there was some conflict like Sura Asura, the gods and the titans. So when they had such conflict, it is very interesting. Like one time the Sura defeated Asura, and one time Asura defeated Sura. So one occasions like Sura, the chief of the god, defeated by Asura. When he was running away from Asuras, he met up with one bird net. So then what happened? Now he's running towards to escape from the Asuras. But he found that if he drive his cart through this bird net, it will be destroyed. So the birds might be died. So then what happened? Sura, it doesn't matter my life. He turned back to the Asuras. So then the Asura was thinking that they are running away, but now turn back. Maybe they prepared very powerful weapons to attack me. So Asuras, they run away. So this is how sometimes it is affecting. So, okay, the one necessary fact is that the mutual understanding. Most of the conflict because of understanding. Sometimes the people, those who struggle with the conflict, they really don't know what is the reason why we are fighting. Everyone is fight, so I am fighting. Right? So that is happening actually. So when the powerful countries are fighting, so the countries, those who have not such power, they are supporting. When one country is fighting, other countries, they try to they wish to observe, they wish to enjoy. So then they are struggling. So it is very necessary mutual understanding. So ignorance is one of the cause that the conflict arises. So in the Sutta Nipata, Buddha was saying, of course, when there is ignorance, the conflict is arising. So we have to understand the nature of the conflict, right? When we talk about, when we read Samyutta Nikaya, there are three terms very necessary to understand. That is like Asada, Adinava, Nissarana. Asada means the satisfactions. You have to see that the satisfactions, right? And when you fight, or after fighting, what you get? You remember that very Emperor Asoka, he killed 99 his brothers, and more than 200,000 people were killed. So after killing all this, what he was fighting for the kingdom, to be emperor. But after fighting, after winning the kingdom, he suffered a lot. Then he changed his attitude. Before he was Chandasoka. Now he changed to be Dhammasoka. Right? So after winning the war, nobody can experience true happiness. So then that part is saying that, okay, in the Sutta Nipata, of course, out of ignorance, they enter into the path of defilement, which leads them to a misery state. So no winning can bring happiness. So therefore, we have to understand what is the satisfactions. And when you understand the satisfactions, there is disadvantages. It is destroying the human beings, destroying the animal, anything. So we have to see the disadvantages. Then we have to find out a way of escaping without fighting. Without fighting. So we have such a discourse like in the Jataka literature, the Kunala Jataka. Kunala Jataka. So when there was almost to fight, remember like Sakyan and Kolian, they were fighting for the Rohini river. But Buddha appeared there and Buddha taught them what is the real meaning of life. Why you are fighting? Fighting for destroying the human beings. So for the sake of water, then the Buddha advised them not to fight. In the very beginning, the picture I saw that Buddha appeared in the war field. In Sri Lanka, in the ancient time, we call that two group of ethnic groups, they were fighting for the sake of golden chair. So Buddha appeared there and settled the issue. Finally, two groups, okay, we are not fighting. They donated, they offered that golden chair to the Buddha. Once they understood, war does not bring any happiness. And okay, like minimizing possible conflict, we can develop 4 sublime states of the Brahma, that is called Brahma Vihara, Metta, the loving kindness, Mudita, compassion, Karuna, and sympathetic joy, Mudita, and equanimity, Upekka. So when you develop these 4 practices, in somehow it is leading us to understand or to minimize the conflict. In the history of once remember that when Venerable Punna wanted to visit Sunaparanta, then he said that the people in Sunaparanta, okay, sure. Sunaparanta, people in Sunaparanta very critical, very they could damage, they could destroy your life, but Venerable Punna accepted. It doesn't matter. Finally, he converted all the people in Sunaparanta to be the Buddhist. And nowadays, like I remember one lady was saying, it is because of some factor, Sunaparanta is the modern Myanmar. So, the people converted to be the Buddhist. And also the showing kindness and love to others, that is one, also like in the Kakachupama Sutta. And also the respecting each other's right. This is very important. We could respect others' right. Nowadays, people are talking about the rights but not the responsibility. But whatever that others' right, we have to respect every religion in the world. It is not the Buddhist because it is the Muslim or any religion. So we have to respect the right of other religious leaders. This Buddha has done. Many occasions when someone come to from other traditions, Buddha has given opportunity. If you read what is called in Kalama Sutta, Upali Sutta, many suttas are there, and also the Panchasila. If you read 2 early precepts like Panatipata, Adinnadana, so this is how we respect others' lives, others' things. If you abstain from stealing, others' properties are safe. If you abstain from killing, others' lives are safe. This is how Buddha advised his disciples to be practice their tolerations or the loving kindness or the practice of non-violence. So, and the political leaders, of course, very significant. Most of the political leaders, so these are, actually I have written a very long article, almost like 18 to 20 pages, and I requested Most Honorable Achan to assist me to publish in the future, so you could read more details. And one of the method of resolving problem is the negotiations. So, and also like careful consumptions of the resources is also Buddhist way to resolve the conflict. And these are the things I would like to discuss, mention here very briefly. So thank you very much for giving this opportunity. Later on, if you have any questions, of course, we will have such opportunity to discuss further. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Piyaratana. I think this is only the first round. I think we have some of more discussion in the second round, so you can give more information that at the second round. So we're gonna move to Professor Dr. Frank J. Hoffman to talk about the Buddhist wisdom in the Tipitaka and how it can be coped with the global crisis.
Thank you very much. So, as said, my subtopic is Buddhist wisdom in the Tipitaka to cope with global crisis. This is the abstract of the subtopic. Crises in the 21st century include climate change, wars, racial hatred and violence, and the Buddhist wisdom strategies to cope with local and global crises are available, for example, in these sutta. The Sapta Surya Sutta, Seven Sun Sutta on the environment, the Madhura Sutta on caste, the Kodana Sutta on anger, the Asalayana Sutta on the unknown Brahman lineages, and the suttas discussing discord within local and global communities. Key concepts here I wish to present are non-harming, ahimsa, non-violence and non-injury to ourselves, to animals, and to vegetation, and non-violence to the earth. This is a theme shown, for example, by Gary Snyder, a Buddhist lay teacher in America, environmentalist, and winner of the Pulitzer Prize for Poetry. Also by Quaker and Buddhist thinker John A. McConnelly, who wrote the book Mindful Mediation. And finally, Richard Gombrich in his Gonda lecture about metta. I apologize for some absences here. They are not of my doing. Thank you. This is the background. Sickness of mindless overconsumption and the need for metta to yourself first. Without a basis for loving kindness or to oneself, it is easy to fall into the trap of being a doormat to the world, and hence, in the long run, being resentful. So, loving kindness, metta, starts with you. If you're not experiencing loving kindness to yourself, how can you give it to others? Eric Fromm, a psychologist, discussed in Arthur Herman's book, Community, Violence, and Peace in the 21st Century, Gandhi, King, Leopold, and Buddha, informed us some time ago, Eric Fromm did, that Western society was sick, was going insane with its overemphasis on consumption of food, sex, movies, and violent behavior. All of this, of course, was to the neglect of how to build sustainable communities and serve the least advantaged members. Rachel Carson, in her book Silent Spring, had rung the alarm bell long before the environmental degradation has come to this crisis in the 21st century. In short, overconsumption of the Earth's resources in a mindless way has led to violence to the environment and eventually to ourselves. Metta has to start with the individual. With the individual first, with yourself first, in order to be truly effective in helping others. the format of the Four Noble Truths, problem, cause, solution, and way, can be used to address just about any of the global crises. Arthur Herman's book, Community Violence and Peace, it can be seen in that book that he uses the Buddha's template, problem, cause, solution, and way, to discuss each of Gandhi, anti-imperialism, Martin Luther King, anti-racism, Aldo Leopold, protection for the environment, and Gautama the Buddha. So in each case, one can use the Buddha's method of problem, cause, solution, and way. The problems we're concerned with here in my talk are environmental degradation, aggression toward other countries, race-based and status-based superiority feelings. The capstone of this philosophical book by Arthur L. Herman is the Buddha's teachings as what informs the problem in every chapter, informs the problem solving, is the template, problem, cause, solution, and way, and also infuses the content in the last chapter on the Buddha. As Herman shows, and by the way, I've used this book just about all of my years teaching in the United States to alert our students to what the situation is, to see things as they really are. Herman shows it is because of crises that reflective people can confront problems and solve them. Crises are really opportunities in disguise to how to find solution. We cannot find solution if we don't see there is a problem. In a crisis, one can turn a difficulty into an opportunity and see things differently in a Buddhist way. So, strategies to cope for local and global crises. Some of our crises in the 21st century are climate change, wars, racial hatred and violence, discord within local and global communities. Buddhist wisdom strategies to cope with global crises are available in suttas like Sattasurya Sutta, the Seven Suns Sutta, which is about global warming and about how seven suns progressively destroy the earth, or maybe we should say regressively destroy the earth. The Kodana Sutta on anger, Asalayana on unknown Brahman lineages, and the sutta on being a son of the Buddha, and instead of being a son of a Brahman. So non-harming, non-violence, non-injury, all of these are translations of ahimsa, I'm sure you know, but the primary one is non-harming, because all the others are included in this. To animals and plants, to vegetation, and to the earth is a theme shown by Gary Snyder. It's hard for me to overestimate the significance of this American poet. He is a Buddhist practitioner. He has done countless practical things to help the environment. From his background, he grew up in the Pacific Northwest of the United States among fishermen and loggers. That is how he understood the problem. He saw the nets that caught everything in the ocean, not just the fish that people were looking for. And all the rest was collateral damage. He saw the loggers clear-cutting sides of mountains so that nothing would ever grow there again. And he spoke out from his heart. He went to the University of Michigan and did East Asian studies. He became a specialist in Chinese literature. Another thinker, himself a Quaker, speaks with very much a Buddhist voice. And I've been recommending this to friends of mine in the Mediation Center at IBSC and MCU. John McConnelly, in a book called Mindful Mediation, not mindful meditation, mindful mediation, shows the sutta-based applicability of this technique of mindful mediation, which he explains from both Quaker, Society of Friends, he is a Quaker, and Buddhist points of view. And finally, I will end with a strategy recommended by Richard Gombrich, who was my external examiner long ago when I was a student at the University of London finishing my dissertation. He wrote a remarkable lecture called the Gonda Lecture, funded by the Netherlands. And in this lecture, he reclaims the importance of metta as one way toward nibbana. Let's think about first the sutta called the Seventh Sun Sutta, Satasuya Sutta. The problem here is catastrophic climate change. Not just nitnoy, not a little here, a little there, catastrophic climate change. We hear about it in the news all the time. We see a picture of a polar bear with no habitat, floating on an iceberg, going who knows where. Even he has no idea. Cause: greenhouse gas emissions, trapping the planet Earth's heat, deforestation, burning too much fossil fuel, and I cannot list all the causes. You well know that overconsumption, I've mentioned before, of products that cause pollution, even aerosol cans, even plastic bottles floating in the ocean. What is the solution? The solution, I think, is change of mind. Change of mind. In Philadelphia, I recall once a year there was a Change Your Mind Day. Buddhists and people from all kinds of points of view that wanted to change our minds in America would get together in Grant Park near the University of Pennsylvania. There would be booths and there would be fairs and all kinds of wonderful things, all trying to address the problem of how are we going to change our mind. This is the solution. What is the way? The way, I think, just to mention part of it, is to plant trees. Sounds simple. Our director, Dr. Hangsa, always plants trees. Plant trees when trees are removed, not mindlessly slashing all vegetation when walking around. I mean, this is outlawed in the Vinaya. You may not walk through the jungle and use a machete to clear your way. And to consider long-term advantages to all beings, not just the human species, to all beings when deciding policy. In this sutta, the Seven Sun Sutra, early Buddhist cosmology reveals the world getting more and more parched and eventually devoid of moisture. What is this? Is this a prophecy, a religious prophecy? Or is the Seven Sun Sutta a prediction made so long ago? I don't claim to know. I live in the mystery of this beautiful text. As each sun appears and all the dinosaurs become extinct, all the huge animals die out, and then little by little, all the moisture goes away. The mighty oceans get like puddles. The Great Lakes dry up, the tarns, the streams, the ponds, they're all gone. And finally, it's a nightmare scenario showing us, I think, what could happen. Eventually, Mount Meru is flattened, by a huge volcanic eruption. Who would have thought it? Mount Meru is considered to be the most permanent of the impermanent things on the earth. Who would have thought Mount Meru could be flattened in the lava flows that go down? Then over time, animals, both large and small, everything dries up. At each level, the earth gets drier and drier. Okay, first, the sun in the great chapter of the Book of the Gradual Sayings illuminates a scenario in which the arising of each of 7 suns gradually destroys the whole planet Earth. Each description in the process of global warming and making the Earth more and more uninhabitable teaches doctrines of impermanence and non-attachment for the benefit of the monks. Secondly, the text also shows why Buddha's teaching is preferable to that of the popular teacher Suneta, who did not teach Nibbana, but only taught rebirth, Punabhava, in the Devaloka. And yet he had hundreds of followers. They were stuck with this teaching because Suneta's teaching was not like the Buddha's, not adequate. Thirdly, the sun is a Pali-Buddhist text with a scientific view of worlds, according to which excessive heat destroys and which also emphasizes letting go of craving for more rebirths. I gave a lecture on this topic at the Siam Society in 2019. Anyway, in this sutta, I don't know what this is. What shall I do? Obscure the vision, right? In this sutta, early Buddhist cosmology reveals the world getting more and more parched, eventually devoid of moisture. Then over time, everything, animals, plants are gone. This is a revered ancient sutta, and now some Buddhists are taking a proactive path, like Gary Snyder and many other Buddhist environmentalists who are socially engaged, a proactive path to protect ourselves, animals, forests, and the earth. We've even seen trees being ordained to protect them from the woodsman saw. And urging ecological, non-harmful consumer choices and by other skillful means. It seems to me as if nature is sending human beings a request for a change of heart. We hear it on the news every day with the violence done to nature. It seems as if we hear the suffering cries of nature on a daily basis when there are devastating forest fires, melting of the polar ice cap, with polar bears wandering around, no home. Clear-cutting vegetation from mountainsides. Nothing will grow unless we plant trees, and so on. The cover of the Journal of the Siam Society, 2 issues back, has a tree ordained with an orange robe in Thailand. Well, above are the words of this author here and now, and yet they echo the writing and sentiment of Gary Snyder, a specialist in translating ancient Chinese literature, a lecturer formerly at the University of California, Davis, known to be a steward of the natural world and opponent of its exploitative work. I recommend one particular piece by him called Writers and the War Against Nature, It was produced by Shambhala Press, a Buddhist press in Boulder, Colorado. And they had an annual series of books called Best Buddhist Writing, starting, I believe, in 2004 and running to 2014. So for a decade, the best Buddhist writing, not only in America, but among well-known leaders, was published in article format. Okay. This is the citation for the Sun. There's also a book called How Much Is Enough by Richard Payne. And it focuses on consumer habits and how that is damaging if we don't change our mind. Okay, here is two viewpoint that seem to conflict, but I think there is a way to make them merge. Traditional Buddhists believe that the world is impermanent and cannot be preserved no matter what we do, because the three marks of existence applies to everything: impermanence, non-substantiality, and suffering, anicca, anatta, dukkha. So they may view the Seven Sons Sutta as just a description of impermanence of the whole world and what could happen according to scientific causation, or alternatively, according to a prophecy. Modern Buddhists believe if we do not apply what Thich Nhat Hanh called famously socially engaged Buddhist practice. By the way, I can't help give you a little anecdote from my memory of growing up during the Vietnam War. During this time, I was a conscientious objector. I would not support the war, but many of my classmates did support the war. And I asked one dear classmate, do you think there are good reasons for Americans to go to Vietnam and fight this war? And he said simply, my country, right or wrong. It's like the Venerable just said, everybody's going to fighting, so I'm going to fighting too. Next, I'd like to turn to Madhura Sutta on caste, which speaks very much to a big social problem in many countries, but in America certainly, as we see groups like the Proud Boys, so-called, and the Oath Keepers, so-called, vandalize, attack the capital of the United States, wishing to overturn an authorized election, wishing to destroy the citadel of democracy from their arrogant mana point of view. I want to say, necessary changes having been made, mutatis mutandis, right? This sutta could be read as a critique of any attempt to use superiority as a vehicle for social control. I'm in the best caste. You swarthy people are in the lower caste. What? What? So read the sutta, if you will. I can't do it justice. The logical form of each argument is, I think, impeccable. Judge for yourself. I do not see any concepts in the premises of the five arguments that are so ambiguous or vague that the premise is arguably false or meaningless. It seems to me that these five arguments have true premises and valid form, such that the arguments are sound. But in critically evaluating any argument, there are two ways an argument may be unsound. One way is the form of the argument is not valid, such that the conclusion does not follow from the premises. Another way it could be unsound is that one or another premise is false or vague. Let's turn to the Aganya Sutta. It includes a striking paragraph in which Vasetha reports to Buddha that Brahmins have blamed Vasetha for becoming a monk. They say only a Brahmin is of the best social grade. The other grades are low. Only a Brahmin is of clear complexion. Other complexions are swarthy. Only Brahmins are a pure breed, not they that are not Brahmins. Only Brahmins are genuine children of Brahma, born of his mouth, offspring of Brahma, created by Brahma, heirs of Brahma. But in the Vasetha Sutta, two Brahmin students were walking and wandering for exercise and conversed about how is it that one is a Brahmin. Bharadvaja maintained that one is a Brahmin when well born and pure on both sides of the family, 7 generations back. Vasetha maintained that one is a Brahmin when virtuous, and when he fulfills the observances. In other words, follows Sila. However, the Buddha explains that name and clan are assigned conventional designations. And one is not a Brahmin by birth. One is a true Brahmin by actions, by kusala kama. Just as one is a merchant or a farmer by their actions. You might look at it like this. Brahmins are chaplains, and chaplains take care of the temple, the Hindu temple. They are justified in occupying that role because they are caretakers of the temple. It's not because they are pure 7 generations back, and as Buddha goes on to argue, nobody knows that. When I ask Brahmins, do you know? Can you tell me? Your father, your grandfather married only a Brahmin lady? Can you really know? So, anyway, both of these monks who were conversing agreed with Buddha's argument and became monks. Now, I stress the word argument. Some people, not in this learned audience, but some people you might encounter, believe there are not any arguments given by the Buddha for any positions. I wrote a little book called Introduction to Early Buddhism as a teaching book only, not a scholarly book. Teaching book at the request of my director, Dr. Hangsa. And I tried to pinpoint the arguments in several suttas in the way I did with the Madhura Sutta on caste. Let's turn to the Asalayana Sutta. Here, the Buddha was approached as a mediator between two people arguing about caste. Buddha's position was that when you ask Brahmins, nobody knows 7 generations back about the purity of those who are now Brahmins. Another interesting fact not discussed in the sutta is migrations and how migrations might have affected in the history of, say, India, what happened about caste. If you go to a faraway place in a large country, it might be possible to reinvent yourself. Just a thought. This slide is missing. I don't know what happened to my PPT. I know I worked on it every morning, every afternoon for the last week. Discourse on being angry, or you could translate it as irritable. There's a translation using managing emotions well is an important part of Buddhist practice. And this sutta is about anger management, to give it the popular term. Equanimity, upekkha, is important among the four Brahma Vihara. The Venerable just went over these. The main point is that in the Kodana Sutta, we are assisted to understand the psychology of the irritable or angry person. By contrast, the mind of metta, or loving kindness, is the state of mind we Buddhists should display to all beings at our best. Sigalovada Sutta is another great one in my view. Here, an ancient Hindu teaching is transformed for ethical use from the Digha Nikaya, taking care of the 6 quarters of personal relationships is an ethical application of the old idea of worshiping directions. There are parents to the east, teachers to the south, wife and children to the west, friends and colleagues to the north, servants and workers at the bottom, and religious teachers and Brahmins at the top. After Buddha explained the details of all these personal obligations and their reciprocal responsibilities, Sigala, the young householder, and in eloquent language was convinced and exclaimed, "Oh, this is wonderful. May I please be a monk under your discipleship." So Sigala before was following this Hindu ritual. And he asked the Buddha, well, what about this? And he says, well, think of it like this. It's like the directions or relationships that you have. And you have to take care of these human relationships. I mentioned before John Connolly's book, which ever since I found it, I've been using snippets of it in classes. What is the process of mindful mediation? Here I summarize it, showing how Buddha Dhamma can be applied to mediate conflict. I guess everyone knows we have a mediation center at IBSC. I'm on the 4th floor of building number 2, Brahmaputra building. So I sometimes see people walking around, lawyers, clients, everyday people, seeking help from the monks and seeking help from Buddha Dharma in the mediation center. So here's a quick summary. 1, know how Buddhist concepts can be understood to provide a psychophysical foundation for peacemaking. Understand the story of the great mango trees and how self-centered individualistic thinking, a feeling of possessiveness, self-righteousness, and a process of legalistic maneuvering leads to conflict with others. See, the 2 neighbors were friends for a long time, and suddenly one man has an evil thought. Oh, I will grab the mangoes. I will look in the law office and find out which side of the line the great mango tree is on. Once he knows, he goes to his neighbor and he says, well, I have to tell you, I'm claiming this tree because it's on my property line. I'm so sorry, all bets are off on our friendly giving of mangoes. I might sell them, I don't know, I'll think about it. I might sell them all, or I might give them just to people that I like. Oh, what fighting ensued. 3, learning how to apply Buddha Dhamma to analyze conflict and resolve it. Why did the conflict of the great mango trees start anyway? Think about it. 4, developing skills in conflict resolution like listening, speaking sensitively, maintaining balance, upekkha, and ensuring confidentiality. 5, contemplating the Buddha's own initiatives as recorded in suttas to mediate conflict with the quarrelsome monks of Kosambi and when mediating between the Kolyan and the Shakyan states. So we see many resources in the sutta to deal with conflicts and make conflict resolution. Developing trust and goodwill between the conflicting parties and using perception and feeling of trust and goodwill to mediate between them. So there are crises of various kinds, but solutions may be found if instead of giving into habitual ways of thinking, like, oh, everybody's fighting, I'll fight, we begin to see things differently from a Buddhist point of view as opportunities for cooperation rather than conflict in communities. So the great mango tree is usually a shared resource in that little community, became a disputed area when one man thought of individual ownership and rights. The two who argued eventually became friends by reflection and mediation, but it took patience and time. I remember a conference I went to long ago with both Asian and Western participants in the American Philosophical Association. And we were trying to figure out the issue of rights and responsibilities, which was primary. And it turned out to divide almost on east-west lines. Most of the Asian participants thought it wasn't a matter of rights. It was a matter of responsibilities. And most of the Western, primarily American, conference participants thought, obviously, it's a matter of rights. We just have to clarify what are the rights. So we can see how a change of mind is really necessary if we're going to work hard on conflict resolution. And by extension, as has been emphasized by a couple of our speakers already, one may conceptualize mindful mediation for negotiations representing the perspective of different countries to ensure peace in the world. It doesn't stop on the local area, right? What's the old saying? Think locally, act globally. Well, building environmentally sustainable homes and communities as a form that cooperation can take. When we think about cooperation in communities, we can more easily act globally about cooperation between countries to ensure world peace. If homes and local communities follow sound ecological practices, then energy will be saved. And when practices are observed in countries that otherwise would have conflicts over oil and natural gas, these conflicts may be lessened. Metta to yourself first, as explained in the Setaka Sutta by the bamboo acrobat's assistant, Metta Kathalika, is a basis for thinking about this, how cooperation helps a colleague and the local community watching the performance. So what is this? It's nicknamed the Bamboo Acrobat Sutta. So imagine this scenario. Maybe some of you have even seen it. There's a high wire act, and there's the acrobat and his assistant. In this case, the assistant is a young woman named Metta Kathalika. And in the beginning, she says, sir, I think we should talk. Okay. He said, I want you to watch my steps. Because if I'm good, you're going to be safe too. And Medakathalika said, oh no, Master, that will never do. Let each of us be mindful of our own steps, and then we will get paid, go safely down the high wire, and the crowd will be happy. But if I have to watch your steps first, I'm going to fall over, and all is lost. So it's worth a read to read this. I have it in my Intro to the Buddhism book. How about Perfect View? Another favorite of mine, Samadhithi Sutta. Knowing the skillful, unskillful karma distinction, kusala, akusala distinction, and refraining from lobha or raga, dosa, and moha, stopping what fuels rebirth by following the Eightfold Path, right view, thought, speech, action, livelihood, endeavor, mindfulness, and concentration, so that knowledge arises and suffering is eliminated, to eliminate grasping. To understand the Four Noble Truths, understand experientially, not just something you read. To understand the defilements or asanas by mindfulness of the body. To understand the Eightfold Way. It's a beautiful sutta, Discourse on Perfect View. Discourse on being angry. 7 ways hate and irritability can harm yourself if you don't adopt self-control, clear seeing, resilience, and right view. Right view. Anger and irritability affects one's physical and mental health and is self-destructive and socially dangerous too. Now I go to one of my culture heroes. That's Venerable Thich Nhat Hanh, author of many books, but the one I refer to now is Peace is Every Step. He advocates creating a culture of peace and recognition of interbeing. Paticca Samuppada is interbeing in this context. With every mindful step, including mindful walking, mindful eating, mindfulness in everyday activities. The founder of socially engaged Buddhism, which method was applied during the Vietnam War, Venerable Thich Nhat Hanh and his followers in the Order of Interbeing have established Buddhist sanghas in plum village communities around the world. I was fortunate in Westchester, Pennsylvania, where I taught for 24 years, to have a Willow Branch Sangha in Westchester. And many of my students went there and got their first taste of meditation. In my view, and I think I share this with many people here, ideally, all of life can become a meditation instead of meditation being just an event in life. So I hear beginner meditators in the United States say things like this: well, this week I meditated 5 hours. How much did you meditate? It's comic. I mean, as if the depth of your meditation could be measured by the clock. How many hours did you sit on the cushion? When the thought didn't simmer down into consciousness yet, that anywhere you are is an opportunity for meditation. We're out of business. 5 minutes. Okay, I'll be wrapping it up soon. Humans are among the beings that inhabit the planet Earth, among the beings. And they are interdependent in the co-arising web with all life. The last item I want to mention is this article from Kindness and Compassion as a Means to Nirvana, 1997 Govinda Lecture. I think it's remarkable that a Pali scholar as deep as Gombrich comes to something very simple these days. He is already retired from Oxford University. He has started so wide the worldwide Pali teaching method. He has done much to support Pali studies and Buddhism. But he remains a layman. And one of his last teachings is, take a look at the place, and he goes through the details, where metta is described as a way to enlightenment. Who would have thought? Venerable Peyuto, in part of his big Buddha Dhamma book called Samasati, published separately, emphasizes sati. Mindfulness is a common translation. It is a way of seeing clearly what is there in front of you. Awareness. Bhikkhu Buddhadasa's a manual for serious beginners called Anapanasati gives you a shortcut. If you have a friend who's trying to start meditating, I would encourage this book to be used. Following the breath, guarding the breath, giving rise to a nimitta, imaginary image in the guarding point, manipulating those images in any way we want to gain power over them, selecting one of these images and contemplating it in a most concentrated way until the breath becomes truly calm and peaceful. With this, one might arrive at perfect awareness in the first jhana. So there are many ways to meditate. We are aware of our Myanmar friends who have a deep meditation tradition. But if you're looking for a manual for serious beginners, for a friend, I can't think of a better one than this. Now it's time to sum up. Am I okay still? Okay. I promised in the beginning to say how conflict arises and how it may cease. Main point, takeaway point. Instead of giving in to habitual ways of thinking, we need to see things of conflict differently as opportunity for cooperation. Mindful mediation points the way. Arthur Herman points the way. How do global warming, race hatred, social fragmentation harm us personally and globally? Unless we can see it clearly, we won't think it's a problem for us to solve. Whether on the individual level or the group level, the solution needs cultivating sati and metta. Buddhist wisdom includes recognition of impermanence and no sustainability of things that cling. The bamboo acrobat, the perfect view sutta, the sutta on Kodana, all move us in the right direction. I need to mention Wetamuni. I found this book rather late in my scholarly life. R.G.D.S. Wetamuni explains with careful reasoning that egolessness is the key to eliminate suffering. Crises are avoidable if there is a mindset of no ego. At worst, we can destroy ourselves and the planet by uncompromising competitive behavior. So these are a few books I recommend personally. These are some teaching books I use. And I did a couple of lectures, actually 3 now, at the Siam Society on Applied Buddhism. That's it. Thank you. Bhikkhu Bhikkhu, Bhikkhuni, Framaha, all of you who are devoted.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor Frank J. Hoffman, to give us your very valuable details and informations about the Buddhist wisdom, especially in the Pali Canon that cope with the global crisis. And then we'll go to Dr. Samantha Rajapaksa, who is our last speaker today. Just a moment. So I think that each speaker give us very valuable detail or informations and give us very clear pictures from the Buddhist canon, and also we also have some kinds of suggestion to give all of us to cope with the global crisis. So is this okay? Okay. Yeah, please. Is this one? Hello, yes. Is this one? I think this is. Oh, okay.
Namaskaran, Bante, and everybody, and it's very good afternoon. So, as soon as I was asked to discuss on this topic by Venerable Bante Sombun, I was sort of looking at the internet to see what kind of problems actually that we are facing in the contemporary world. And I try to sort of list down each problem so that we can look at our ancient sources, particularly the Pali canonical sources, whether we can find out some sort of potential solution in order to at least give some solution to the crisis. So, but the problem is that I was looking at these problems, I came to know that there is kind of very little to offer in terms of early Buddhist literature. So before that, I try to sort of list down each problem that we are facing. Now, these were some of the topics that I was able to identify, and of course our speakers, including Bante Pieratan and Professor Hoffman, were presenting some of the problems, and even in the morning we came to know that there are some significant amount of problems that we are facing in the contemporary world. Now, the crisis and conflict, when we see, and then these were some of the problems I came to realize that in terms of wealth distribution. Now, when you see the global wealth, how that is being distributed among the world population, of course there is an inequality, right? So the distribution of wealth, there is a problem. So it has become not only global problems, I would say it's a kind of local problem, regional, and it becomes a global phenomenon. So that is a kind of challenging, or sort of the things that we need to address in order to understand the problem. Those who on the top enjoy lots of wealth, whereas the majority of the population in the world is kind of barely supply their basic necessities. That is a kind of the global problem that we have to realize. That is the one thing, and it is associated with this chronic poverty. Now, you can see there are so many countries in the world. They are suffering so much in the sense that they cannot supply even their basic necessities, food, water, things like that. So that is the kind of situation that we are facing today. And thirdly, that is again, we can understand deforestation, or as a part of this, the threatening of biodiversity and ecosystem. Global, it is connected with global warming. So that is another situation that we have to address in order to come to a sort of solution. Otherwise, we all as human beings have to suffer in terms of how we are going forward. So that is, and the other thing is the climate crisis, which is associated with this eco damage. And this is another point that I think very rarely emphasized in terms of human trafficking, how that is taking place worldwide. And lastly, health problem. When we see so much money, so much wealth has been invested on health insurance worldwide. So what kind of viable or practical solution as Buddhists, when you think of Buddhist text or when you think of Buddhist literature, what kind of things have been laid down, or what kind of things have been written down in order to address this problem? So this is the next step. As far as I understand, there are very less, so there is less amount of literature in terms of particular problems. The reason is because some of the problems are kind of recent emergence. They are not historical problems. So Buddhism, at that time, how Buddhism instructed, or how Buddhism lays down their instruction, is a kind of very limited in that sense. So therefore we have to agree with the point that there is a very limited amount of literature in terms of addressing all global crises. That is the one thing. But the other point is there is enough amount of evidence, textual evidence, that we can show in order to at least to understand the problem and also to give some sort of solution, right? And when you talk about this early Buddhist literature, of course, as our two speakers were pointing out, canonical sources, Pali canonical sources, can be regarded as precious evidence in order to understand this problem and as well as to give some sort of solution. The other aspect is as you know, Emperor Asoka's inscription. That is also part of early literature or early evidence that we can take into account in order to understand this sort of problems. Also, Nagarjuna, Nagarjuna's Mahayana scholar, also pointed out some of the aspect which is very important, quite relevant to our subject, what we are discussing today. So let me try to sort of go one by one. At least this is what I have collected in terms of solving these problems and potentially understanding some of the crises. As you know, Emperor Asoka, or King Piyadasi, was developing kind of welfare state, which included all sort of life in the society. I mean, not only human being, even the animals are taken into account in terms of protection, animal welfare, also taking care of animal treatment. All these aspects are taken into account. So, Emperor Asoka has appointed this special type of Dhamma commissioner, or we can call Dhamma Mahamattas, in order to supervise how things are functioning in order to provide welfare to the entire community as well as to the entire state. So it covers all aspects of the country. So not only human beings' welfare, but also how they are equally treated. So this is a kind of very interesting in terms of what we discussed today in relation to our topic. And also when you think of Nagarjuna observation, now there is this Ratnavali, the composition of Ratnavali by Nagarjuna. He talks about the idea that how the king should rule over, and the aspect that he has to consider in order to have a kind of state which is taking care of all aspects of the humanity. So this is early evidence that apart from canonical sources that we can understand the situation, how that has been, at least to some extent, the problem has been addressed. So let me go over to the main aspect, that is Pali sources in terms of understanding. In terms of understanding the problems and some potential solution that has been offered in Pali literature. Now, when it comes to the problem of inequality and in terms of resource distribution and poverty, this chronic poverty, we can look at some of the suttas, I think discourses. Some were, two of our speakers were telling about these suttas, but I'm trying to understand some more suttas so that we will be able to understand how this canonical text are identifying this kind of problem. Now, when it comes to Adammika Sutta in the Anguttara Nikaya, where you have this division of Adammika Raja and Dhammika Raja, right? Now this is the kind of, now Buddha say who is a Adammika or unrighteous king, and then what kind of situation that country has to go through when this kind of king is ruling over. So basically the country is experiencing a challenging situation. Not only they are facing some problems, but also in terms of their livelihood, they might be facing some problems, and also they might get short-lived life, because the situation is the king is responsible for not only prosperous nation, but also some sort of the corrupt nation. Now, for example, if the country is going through a prosperous situation, the king is responsible. But also at the same time, when the king is not taking care of the matters in the country, of course, the country is going backward rather than forward. So that is what this Adammika Sutta in Anguttara Nikaya mainly discusses. This, now you can see this Balavanto Appabada. Now this, you can say Bahuabada. Now person become sort of less diseases, so healthy person. Appabada is you have healthy life, but Bahuabada is you have disease or you have health problems. So that is entirely responsible in terms of how the king is ruling over, in terms of how the country is experience that sort of problems. So we can say that in the Anguttara Nikaya, this is one of the textual evidence. And also I think you know this one, Chakkavati Sutta in the Anguttara Nikaya also talks about this. Even birds, plants become prosperous or become sort of, they live free life as a result of the rule or how the country has been ruled over. So in that respect, I think this is one of the important discourses in terms of the ideal ruler. Also, we have to say kind of, now when you say the classical Buddhist sources, mainly these textual evidence point out the true welfare state. So, or ideal ruler. So, in support of that, we can draw some textual evidence from Anguttara Nikaya, from Adammika Sutta, as well as Chakkavati Sutta of Anguttara Nikaya. So that is kind of more related in terms of the ruling aspect, whether the king is corrupt or king is ruling based on universal justice, righteousness. So these are aspects that we have to understand in terms of how the good governance is taking place in a country. Because when you think of a ruler who is corrupt, who is misusing financial resources, that countries cannot be expected as a prosperous nation. It almost all the time goes through turbulent time period. So that is what, in terms of good governance, this textual evidence is very important. And when you go to alleviation of poverty, now you can see Digha Nikaya, in the Digha Nikaya, you can see Chakkavati Sihanada Sutta, which is very specific of the concept of alleviation of poverty, how the poverty can be eliminated in terms of providing the raw material for the farmers and those who engage agriculture, so on and so forth. So that is why Chakkavati Sihanada Sutta is considered as one of the, I think most of you know about this, what the content of Chakkavati Sihanada, so I'm not going to discuss furthermore. So even now you can see Kutadanta Sutta. That is also another very important aspect in terms of good governance. So the problem is what we have to understand, why the poverty is risen, why there are so many poor countries. The problem lies the concept of mismanagement in the resources, how they are misusing resources, right? So that is a kind of every citizen is not equally treated in terms of wealth distribution. So there is a problem. So that is why there is a class of rich, very minor percentage, but majority of people are poor. So the reason is because of this lack of distribution of wealth properly. So it has to be distributed properly and equally. So that is the responsibility of the government. So that is what, and also this Kutadanta Sutta is very important in terms of kind of how the law has been imposed on criminals, and what there was this story that they are suggested kind of sacrifice, but the chaplain asked not to have a kind of animal sacrifice, rather to identify the problems of these bandits and criminals and give them necessary raw material in order to engage in agriculture and so on and so forth. So that is why Kutadanta Sutta is also very important in terms of understanding the poverty things and also in terms of good governance. And another problem is, as I said, two of our speakers also talked about the climate crisis. That is also one of the problem which is regarded as very dangerous situation at the moment, because the temperature is rising. So the humanity, the modern human, global humanity has to face this problem. So when it comes to Buddhist texts, what kind of things that we can draw evidence to in order to support to how to engage in preservation of environment? I think one of the important textual evidence appears in Vanaropa Sutta of Sangyutta Nikaya. Vanaropa Sutta. That is, that there is this concept called Aramaropa Vanaropa. Tesang divacha rattocha sada punyang pavaddati. Now, this is very important textual evidence when you think of the reforestation. Now, we have this problem of deforestation. Now, the trees are cut off, and now we have barren lands, and there is damage in the ecosystem, right? And the global temperature is rising. So the solution perhaps can be drawn from this, one of the evidence, from Vanaropa Sutta of Sangyutta Nikaya, where it is advised that Aramaropa Vanaropa, to grow plants, to grow groves, is encouraged. To plant life, right? In order to protect. Now, this is what it means, reforestation. Now, what we are experiencing, sort of deforestation, we have to do the opposite, planting trees. So, this is one of the activities which is considered very precious. Tesan divacha rattocha sada punyang pavaddati. That means when you engage this kind of activity, that is, you are planting tree, this is a kind of, you generate merit or punya day and night. So this is very important textual evidence if you consider how the kind of potential solution to offer this global crisis of climate change. I think there are some other aspects that we can consider, because as you know, we are celebrating Vesak, right? Now Buddha's birth, enlightenment, and passing away, all three major events took place in the wood, not in a man-made house or a palace, but it took place in the forest or in the wood. So that gives a sense that how Buddhism is closer to environment, right? And not only that, when you see Theragata, Therigata, and all these beautiful verses where you can see lots of activities in the forest, right? So that is, now you can see the connection. The Buddhism, when you talk about the incident, case studies in the text, they are very well connected with the environment. So that shows that Buddhism all the time encourage preservation of environment rather than destruction of environment. Buddhism never say that you have to destroy the environment. So that is why this is a very important aspect or concept in terms of finding a sustainable solution to the problem of environmental catastrophe or the global crisis that we are facing today. Okay, now I'm going to the next point, that is human trafficking. This is also considered as one of the biggest problems in some rich countries where the people are, or the human beings are taken forcibly and they are sort of misused, exploited, right? So, but as far as the textual evidence is concerned, you can see there is this Vanijja Sutta of Anguttara Nikaya that talks about the human trafficking. Akaraniya Dhamma. Upasakena Akaraniya Dhamma. Pancha Vanijja Upasakena Akaraniya. So usually lay people should avoid 5 types of activities. So they should not engage. One is considered Satta Vanijja. Satta Vanijja. Now, other aspect, you know that Satta means there are 2 Sattas, that is weapons. You should not engage in weapon business. You should not do the weapon deals. And the important aspect is Satta Vanijja. That is the trade in human. That is, you should not sell human being to other people. Right? So Buddha discouraged this sort of trade. Now, this is the only occurrence in Vanijja Sutta in Anguttara Nikaya. You can see this can be considered as one of the textual evidence which suggests that we should not do human trafficking. Right? Buddhism has no place in terms of selling human being. Right? So that is one aspect. Okay, I think I'm going to discuss about the last problem, but which is I need to take a little bit of time because it's a kind of modern trend in the modern world now. The people are facing lots of health problem, right? So in terms of health problem, what kind of solution or what kind of interpretation that we can see in early Buddhist literature? Now, when you think of health, now as you know, this is a very popular saying, Arogya Paramalabha. That is, the health is the greatest gift, right? Now, this is one aspect of how Buddha appreciate the healthy person. Now, if you become healthy physically, then you can go for the mental activities like meditation and other activities. So you have to be physically fit in order to do the things. But the important thing is, now I found this concept very recently, Eka Bhattika. This concept appears in Buddhist literature, but the idea is when you Google or when you look at YouTube videos about intermittent fasting, the concept called intermittent fasting, right? Now, this is very important health practice. Now, again, this is going against the mainstream health advice. Like, for example, the doctors, they prescribe medicine, right? But they never say, very rarely they say, to practice intermittent fasting. What is intermittent fasting? Intermittent fasting is something that you don't eat every time. For example, you don't eat 3 meals. But you can eat just 1 meal or 2 meals a day. Why? Because now research suggests, new research, the research findings suggest that when we starve, when we become hungry, our body has some sort of evolutionary process of autophagy. Autophagy is something that cleaning our body itself. But it happens when we become hungry. But for example, if you eat 3 meals a day, it is not going to happen. Suppose that you eat 1 meal a day, or let's say eka battika. Now, the Pali word eka battika, that is 1 meal a day. Now, Buddha very much practiced this eka battika, right? So this has different interpretation, but now you can see scientific discoveries, like now science say that to cure cancer, to cure heart attack, all sort of things, you have to practice intermittent fasting. That is eating 1 meal or 2 meals a day. That is fairly enough. But you should not eat all the time. You should stop snacking. Don't eat snacks all the time. Because Buddha practiced this one. Maybe full meal, which has lots of calories. But don't eat all the time. This is what the Ekabhattika concept. I think this concept is very important in terms of cure cancer and to avoid some other health problems. Because when you go through or when you search in YouTube, look at intermittent fasting. Now it is a sort of very popular topic, because not only it can avoid cancer and all this health problem, but also you can focus your mood, your cognitive function is super, right? So the thing is that we have to practice Ekabhattika, because this is a kind of very ancient practice that Buddha recommended. Now what happens in the West, that we can see the concept of Ekabhattika, or 1 meal a day. They call it 1 meal a day, or OMAD. 1 meal a day, or OMAD. But Buddha found this Ekabhattika concept 2,500 years ago. There must be scientific reason, because now there is a Japanese scientist who won the Nobel Prize for autophagy, because he was the person who found autophagy. Autophagy means when you don't eat for 18 hours, your body itself eat protein, right? So this is a kind of mechanism, evolutionary mechanism, that is very useful for our health. You can avoid cancer, the health problems, and also heart problem, and also your mind is functioning or working superbly. So going back to Buddhist literature, I think I am sort of trying to relate the concept of Ekabhattika. That is what now the modern science, they sort of intermittent fasting, right? So starving body for a period of time, and then you can eat, maybe 4 hours window. You can eat whatever you want, but still you allow your body to become hungry, right? This is an ancient mechanism, or a human evolutionary mechanism, that is very much now on the research. Scientists now, they are putting a lot of effort to find out the benefit of Ekabhattika. So that's what I'm interested, because how this concept is related to ancient Buddhists, what the Buddha followed, Ekabhattika Rattuparata, right? So when you see how Buddha's, the daily routine, Buddha ate 1 meal a day, right? So that means perhaps I happen to went to this commentarial interpretation. It gives us some slight interpretation. It's not necessarily 1 meal, in the sense that you can drink maybe some liquid and avoid sort of solid food. So, but somehow I am going to relate this concept of Ekabhattika with the intermittent fasting. So that means already we have found solution in the Buddhist text, which is very attractive in the sense that Buddhism is quite scientific in terms of understanding our health. Okay, I think mainly that is what I want to discuss. And thank you all, Bante, for listening to my presentation. Thank you very much.
So thank you so much, Dr. Rajpaksa. So I think we have a time for discussions, but due to Assistant Professor Piyaratana have some appointment in the evening, so I would like to ask you for some conclusions or something that you have to give some more detail on your topic, and also I have some questions also. Because is this due to the Vesak Busha Day, right? And Professor Rajpaksa said it's just like the days of the Buddha birth, enlightened, and also the past way of the Buddha. And if you compare the situation at the Buddha periods of time, or the time of the Buddha, and even the current situations, I think it's have a lot of different situations. But the teaching of the Buddha can also apply at that time and also in this current situation. And the question is how, what do you think that why these kinds of teaching is also still applied nowadays?
So when you refer to the Dhamma, one quality of Dhamma is called akaliko.
Yeah.
So applications of the teaching of the Buddha, it is timeless. Why it is called timeless somehow? Maybe the shape of the problems might be different, but almost the Buddhist teaching related with, it is called the mind-based teachings. So when we see the contemporary conflict or the issues, most of the conflict are related with maybe it is because of individual minds or because of mind of many, right? So then it is maintaining of individual mind, somehow leading to the maintained the peace within others. So it is called internal peace and external peace, right? So why Buddhism is applicable? Even though the situation or the picture of the conflict might be the different, but all are related with human mind. Yeah. Sometimes we can give the interpretation. We have seen that now we talk about global warming and something like that. So why it's happened? Because of the deforestation. Who are doing this? Human beings. And you can see that the few months ago in the Bangkok, the people, they experienced something in the air, could be air pollutions. Why? It is because of the huge concrete buildings. There is no forest to provide necessary oxygen to breathe for the human being. So that is the mind of human beings, right? We are trying to struggle, trying to claim that we are very developed. Of course, we need the development, but within, when we have to use the resources, we have limited resources, but our necessary is boundless. Yeah. I remember the S.F. Schumacher, the Ismail is beautiful. He mentioned that the earth provides to satisfy everyone's needs, but not everyone's greed. So we are having too much desire to fulfill, but limited resources. So that's the reason. So Buddha said in very beginning of his discourses, everything made of mind. Mind is the forerunner. So when we maintain our mind, of course it is even the time of the Buddha or even today, so human can play very significant or the important role, right, within maintained in mind. So as I said in some discourse, even though we can give the different interpretation, what is the cause of conflict, but somehow it is related with the desire, someone's desire. someone's willingness. So if we can maintain, we can balance our willingness for the benefit of others, of course that Dhamma could be applied no matter the time. So what is Buddha said, it is called akalika. Yes.
Thank you very much, Assistant Professor Piyaratana, and I think that is the time.
Let me to for most venerable Achan Sombun Wuddikaro, the Vice Deputy Rector of the Academic Affair, and also the most venerable Achan Surasak, Deputy Rector of the Foreign Affairs, and other venerables and directors for giving this opportunity. And I hope that this seminar for the venerables, those who are going to contribute for the future generations of the Dhamma, so Dhammaduta or the foreign missionaries, venerables, those who are training, so you will get benefit of these fruitful discussions even for the future. And thank you very much. I am very happy to be here and hope that everyone, may all beings be happy and prosperous. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Dr. Piyaratana, for having a very good contributions today. Thank you so much. So I think we also have a time for open Q&A questions and discussions. So if you're in, if monks here or some venerable here can have some questions, please feel free to ask some questions about or ask some questions maybe due to the presentations, or if you want some more explanations from our speakers, or is this your time to asking, and the speaker can also give some more explanations and give some clear picture. Yeah, I think that they have some microphone, right? You have some microphone, please.
Thank you very much. And I just arrived from Khon Kaen province to be interpreter tomorrow on Vesak Pusha Day. And this is maybe the 15th year for me to participate here as a former teacher of this university also. And I came to listen to Professor on my left hand side, talking about eating one meal a day or maybe 2 times a day. But exactly I have the question for Venerable also, if we have time for sharing the ideas about it, to make the conference much exciting for all of us here, not just one-way communication. And if I don't make any mistake, remembering the teaching of the Lord Buddha also said that hunger is the worst disease for human being, referring to maybe Nang Patachara or somebody else who was really hungry before a meeting with the Lord Buddha, and the Buddha refused to teach without fulfilling her stomach first. The first question that I would like to ask you is, do you have any comments on this one? This is contradiction between 2 teachings of the Lord Buddha. Number 1, you may answer later. And the second question for maybe some other panelists. We always refer to the teaching of the Buddha as akaliko, timeless. But exactly, if we refer to timeless, people living in the same society, various people, greed, hatred, and delusion. 90% of them knows nothing about greed, hatred, and delusion. They have their own relations. That is the end process of us saying that akaliko. How can we convince, how can we how can we convince those who don't know about this one to understand about the teaching of the Lord Buddha, sharing, living together, etc. I do not know, that's why the topic today is Buddhist wisdom in Tipitaka, not extract from Tipitaka, but tangible way. How can we, I do not know, in practice, utilize in daily life. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think, thank you, Achan, for your questions. I mean, maybe I can answer the first question. Is very intriguing, because the fact that when a person is hungry, right, and then Buddha asks, first you have to fulfill your hunger and then try to listen to Dhamma. First, the hunger is very important, because sabbe satta ahara titika, like we all depend on food, right? So that is what the concept. But the thing is, like, the problem is nowadays we have too much food. The food is in abundance, right? So we can go to 7-Eleven or whatever, the Lotus or whatever, we can eat anytime we want. Nobody asks. But the problem is, are our body ready to accept, to digest all the food in our stomach, right? The problem is, I think, the idea is we have to have a willpower. I mean the willpower to resist to the food, because now think of an historical or our ancestor. Basically, let's say they kill an animal and then eat, and they go for hungry for a couple of days, right? They never catch a prey. But that is how the body function historically. But what is happening nowadays, our body is sort of fill up with all the food, all the sugary things. And the problem is our body is not ready to accept. So that is why we have this all sort of the problem of cancer and all these food-related diseases. So the idea is we can divide our eating window. For example, we can eat 2 meals a day. We can gradually become sort of 2 meals a day and then try to graduate to 1 meal a day. The thing is, during that window, we have to have a nutritionally dense food in our stomach. Otherwise, it's kind of problematic for the body. Now in the West, especially in American research journals, I found that there are this concept, intermittent fasting is an effective remedy for cancer, and also all sort of these digestive issues, metabolic functioning issue. So in that sense, I think we have to have, as you suggest, in the environment of food, we have to have a willpower to resist and to manage our eating window. For example, we can go like 6 hours without eating. It's a kind of promise that you make with you. And then gradually you can go to you can enjoy delicious food, maybe fast food, whatever, the food that you have. But also you can think of your health. That you have to think both your health and eating delicious. So in that sense, I think limiting or calorie restriction, sort of time restricted eating plan is very important. I mean, in terms of that, I think what the Buddha followed, Ekabhattika, is quite effective in sort of overcoming these problems. And the other thing is the concept of akalika, right? But that is a bit, I'm not clear, but I say that you don't have to be a Buddhist all the time, but there are some people who are non-Buddhist who practice Buddhist concept, that we say that these are Buddhist concept. Yeah. So that means, even some Buddhists, they are not practicing Buddhist principle. So it's that way. So you have to understand, but by practicing sort of good things, what is right, morally good, is as a human being, you can understand even other religion, they promulgate or they put forward some this kind of guideline which is beneficial for the human being. So morally, good conduct. So I think I sort of gave an answer to that question. I'm not sure, but thank you.
I think Professor Hoffman have some comment on these questions, please.
Yes, I very much enjoyed that repartee back and forth, and I want to say something in support of what Samantha has just said, but also add something. So I wish to talk about mindful eating and middle way. So thinking about mindful eating, one benefit is if you eat slowly and mindfully, paying attention, being fully aware of what you are eating, you will eat slower. And when you eat slower, your stomach will be full sooner. That is a very interesting fact. You can verify it for yourself in your own experience. In relation to that, I would like to talk about the Buddhist position on the middle way. That is, he was born in a princely palace with all the comforts, all the wonderful games he could wrestle, all the beautiful women he could select his wife from any of them, all the great food, everything, all the creature comforts. That is what I would call sensualism of the palace. At the other extreme, after he undertook the great renunciation and convinced his charioteer Channa to disobey his father, who wanted to keep him in this little bubble so that eventually he would become a world conqueror, not a world renouncer. He didn't want his son going out in the woods and becoming a hippie, as we would say. He wanted him to be a successor, right? So one extreme is sensualism. And when he went on the great renunciation, he encountered Jains. They're both sky-clad Jains and other Jains. But among the Jains, it is a common practice to punish the body. Their view of karma and jiva is different from the Buddha's point of view. So in Jainism, your jiva is naturally luminous, but every time you do anything that's wrong, and some would say even any tiny action can contribute to the blemishes on the jiva. And eventually, just through living, natural living, your jiva will become obscured so you cannot see out. You are avidya, right? So this is their theory, very different theory, a particle theory of karma. And so on this way of living, you will punish the body to erase the black marks, so to speak, on your jiva. And it will take a long time for that to rise up to the top of a bounded universe and experience moksha. So on one side you have sensualism that the Buddha experienced. On the other side, he experienced during his sojourn to find the truth, the ascetics. So in that particular sense of asceticism that is appropriate to Jainism, punishing the body, it could be as extreme as trying to sleep on beds of nails, or as extreme as putting a bolt through your tongue, or as I saw in India once, a man pulling a cart with hooks in his body, pulling the cart. Okay, that's extreme, and so was the sensualism of the palace extreme. Where is the middle way? It is a middle way between asceticism in that sense and sensualism, and it would apply to food, certainly, which is the present conversation. So I submit that one way to think of food is to nourish the body so you can continue your quest for nibbana. The purpose of food is not to, as most of my countrymen in America think, to feel good. And I'll tell you from my own experience that many people in that country think that hunger is your enemy. Oh, you should never feel hungry, Johnny, when you're little. Please tell me if you're hungry. I will feed you right away. So it's as if hunger is our enemy. We grow up thinking this way. So this leads to gorging the body with food. On the other hand, there are some very sensible families in America who understand portions, the idea of protein and portions. You don't eat seconds or even thirds of the bowl. There's only one time. You eat one plate. And nobody in that family, a sensible family, asked for more. So sati, mindfulness, and mindfulness of eating is an additional aspect, I think, and also remembering the Buddhist teaching of the middle way between sensualism and asceticism. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So, have any more questions? So we have plenty of time here. The speaker says like he wants some challenging questions. So if you have some, but I mean that any questions that you have, you can ask our speaker. Please.
ที่มันเป็นภาษาไทยมีไหมโปรแกรมภาษาไทย
I think we have like
5?
10.
Okay, I'll take 2 minutes, okay? And as a lay person teaching outside MCU, Mahachulalongkorn Buddhist University, we see clearly that outside there are so many unsatisfactory people living together in society. Exactly, sometimes we say that who have longer hands to catch the benefit they can by using the powers or the positions they have to grasp. That is one of the global crisis also in the world. And referring to Venerable who said that the greed of the people and the natural resources is enough for feeding people living on earth. But it's not enough for only one person. This Mahatma Gandhi said, it cannot satisfy one person who has overgreed to get everything they want. That's why, how can we, I do not know, people understand about this but not correct everything they want and not so much eager to gain more than knowing, sharing about morality with people. That is the very important thing, I think, as Buddhist people, even Buddhist people, as you said, cannot practice. But at the same time, how can we begin from Buddhist people practicing first like this? And I've engaged in many activities outside. We see so many things. That's why beyond Buddhist teaching also, it's quite difficult to bring together sometimes. Do you have any ideas about referring to the situation in the history, telling us about the society like this, corruption and greedy, etc.? How can Buddhist teachings be engaged and utilized for the purpose of human being? Thank you.
I really appreciate your question, so I volunteered to say something.
Thank you, sir.
I believe contentment is a Buddhist virtue, and overreaching is the cultural norm in many countries. Overreaching, by that I mean wanting more. It's always more. Supersize it used to be a commercial. So people aren't concerned, just to get the big one, but the huge one. And once you come at reality with this mindset that more is always better, we ignore Schumacher's teaching, which was emphasized by the Venerable, small is beautiful. Instead of overreach, maybe we should think about a modest reach. And that would be in accordance with the idea of contentment. Unfortunately, our cultures, modern cultures in many countries, do not teach young children to be satisfied, to be content, and the virtue of having contentment. But they say, oh, Johnny, you must get more. Go defeat them. All your classmates need to be regarded as potential enemies, not as potential friends. You are to come out on top. I don't want you to come back with less than straight A's. Go in there, kick it, beat them. Very funny.
ขอบคุณนะครับขออนุญาตฝากคำถามไว้หลังเวทีหลังไมค์เพิ่มเติมนะครับเนื่องจาก yes
Can I?
yeah
Oh.
you can
Yeah, I agree with what Professor is talking about this in terms of. Now, recently there was this question was put forward to Bhikkhu Bodhi, an American scholar monk, like what kind of universal human being, what kind of life standard that the people now are suggesting to a kind of, what kind of living amount that they are expecting. So Bhikkhu Bodhi was telling the idea that we have to have a life very closer to Buddhist monk. Not exactly Buddhist monk, but what the Buddhist monk is practicing is very, it should be a human being, lay person. This is mainly for the lay people. So the lay people should practice kind of lifestyle very closer to Buddhist monk. Not exactly the Buddhist monk, otherwise it becomes a Buddhist monk, but it's very closer to Buddhist monk life. The idea is that you have to have a very simple life. That is the thing. So that's what Professor is also talking about, contentment. Like Subharata, like we have in contentment, right? Subharata in what we have to have a moderate life in our supply. For example, how we supply our wealth. We have to take care other people also, because the wealth is not for just one human being. It's entire planet for all the people who are living. So we have to think them also, right? So that is why if we practice kind of model very closer to Buddhist monk, I think that's a perfect model for a lay person.
So totally agree and think that actually there's probably enough food capacity on the earth to feed everyone, including the hungry people. But because some people in cultures where the people are socialized to overreach, some countries are consuming too much. And this is why there is hunger. One big reason, not the only reason, but one big reason why there is hunger is overconsumption, wasteful consumption on the part of some countries. I think you can guess which countries these are.
งาน
My
การเสวนาวิชาการเนื่องในพิธีเฉลิมฉลองวันวิสาขาโลกวันสำคัญสากลของโลกครั้งที่ 18 ในวันนี้ก็ได้สำเร็จลงด้วยดีในนามสถาบันพระไตรปิฎกศึกษามหาวิทยาลัยมหาจุฬาลงกรณราชวิทยาลัยต้องขอกราบขอบพระคุณท่านคณะวิทยากรผู้ทรงคุณวุฒิทุกท่านณโอกาสนี้ครับ
As we reach to the end of our session of the International Academic Seminar, Buddhist Wisdom Coping with the Global Crisis. On behalf of Tipitaka Study Institute, we would like to give our hearty appreciation to thank you all the keynote speakings.
โอกาสนี้ขอกราบอาราธนาท่านพระมหาสมเด็จตปาสีโรดร.ผู้อำนวยการส่วนวิชาการและวิจัยสถาบันพระไตรปิฎกศึกษาพร้อมด้วยนางสาวศิรินภากองวัสกุณณีผู้อำนวยการส่วนงานบริหารสถาบันพระไตรปิฎกศึกษาได้มอบของที่ระลึกและเกียรติบัตรแก่คณะวิทยากรขอกราบอาราธนาครับผมท่านแรกท่านได้มอบแล้วนะครับท่านปิยะรัตนะเนื่องจากท่านติดธุระก็ได้เมตตาเข้ามาเป็นวิทยากรด้วยความเมตตาอย่างสูงนะครับลำดับต่อไปขอกราบนิมนต์ท่านพระมหาสมเด็จตปาสีโรได้มอบเกียรติบัตรและของที่ระลึกแก่ท่านอาจารย์วิทยากรนะครับท่านแรกคือศาสตราจารย์ดร.แฟรงค์นะครับกราบนิมนต์ครับ
And may I respectfully invite Most Venerable Dr. Pramahā Somdet Tapasilo, Director of Academic and Research Division, and Ms. Sirit Napa Kongwasakuni, Director of Administration Division, to give a certificates and souvenir to the speakers. And the first one, Professor Dr. Frank Huffman.
ต่อไปขอเรียนเชิญท่านผู้อำนวยการส่วนงานบริหารสถาบันพระไตรปิฎกศึกษานางสาวศิรินภากองวัสกุณณีผู้อำนวยการส่วนงานบริหารได้มอบของที่ระลึกและเกียรติบัตรแก่ท่านอาจารย์ดร.สมัทธาราชปัชชะ
And may I invite Ms. Sirinapha Kongwasakuni, Director of Administration Division, Tipitaka Study Institute, to give certificates and souvenir to Dr. Samantha Rajapaksha.
พร้อมด้วยมอบของที่ระลึกและเกียรติบัตรเป็นเกียรติแก่ท่านอาจารย์ผู้ช่วยศาสตราจารย์ดร.ณัฐพลสิริสวัสดิ์เป็นดับไปครับผม
And give the certificate and souvenir to our honorably moderator, Assistant Professor Dr. Nathapon Sirisawat, our moderators today. โอกาสนี้ในนามสถาบันพระไตรปิฎกศึกษามหาวิทยาลัยมหาจุฬาลงกรณราชวิทยาลัยขอกราบอาราธนานิมนต์ท่านพระมหาสุรศักดิ์ปัจจันตเสโนรองอธิการบดีฝ่ายกิจการต่างประเทศได้เมตตากล่าวปัจฉิมโอวาทและกล่าวปิดการเสวนากราบอาราธนาด้วยความเคารพครับผม And now, on the behalf of Tipitaka Study Institute, may I take this opportunity to invite Most Venerable Assistant Professor Dr. Pramaha Surasak Pajantaseno, Vice Rector for Foreign Affairs, to deliver the closing sermon and closing speech to the participants.
Respected Most Venerable Pramaha Sombun Wuthikaro, Vice Rector for Academic Affairs, Mahachulalongkornrajvidyalaya University, Chairman of the Committee for Exhibition and International Academic Seminar today. Respected Venerable Mahasangha, distinguished participants, honorable scholars, and my dear students, overseas Dhammaruta Bhikkhu, trainees, class 29. Ladies and gentlemen, international academic seminar on Buddhist wisdom in the Tipitaka with to cope with the global crisis. On the occasions of the 18th United Nations Day of Vesak celebration 2023, organized by Tipitaka Study Institutes together with Buddhist Research Institutes of Mahachulalongkornrajvidyalaya University, under supervision of Venerable Pramaha Sombun Vutikaro, Vice Rector for Academic Affairs, joined by Dhammaruta College and every faculties of MCU, Faculty of Buddhism, Faculty of Social Science, Faculty of Humanities, Faculty of Education, and International Buddhist Study College as well. Perfectly complete. On behalf of Most Venerable Professor Pratham Vachara Bandit, Rector of Mahachulalongkornrajvidyalaya University, may I express my sincere appreciation to Venerable Pramaha Sombun Vutikaro, Vice Rector for Academic Affairs, the Chairman of the Committee for Exhibition and International Academic Seminar. My sincere thanks to Tipitaka Study Institutes, led by Most Venerable Associate Professor Prathep Vacharajan, the Director, and his colleagues. The Director of Buddhist Research Institutes of MCU, directed by Associate Professor Prakru Suthikiti Bandit, Director, and Dhammaruta College of MCU, led by Venerable Dr. Pramaha Payun Chotivaro, the Director. Venerable Prakru Sithi Bandit, Director of Evaluation and Registration Office, MCU, and his colleges. Academic Affairs Divisions, led by Pramaha Kwanchai Puttaviseso. Divisions of International Relations, under supervision of Pramaha Kosun Thirapanyo. Department of International Public Relations and Dissemination, led by Dr. Sommai Suphasit. And importantly, distinguished scholar, share precious knowledge with us today, Professor Feng from International Buddhist Study College, IBSC of MCU. Dr. Samantha Rajapaksa, originally from Sri Lanka, from Mahidol University. Venerable Assistant Professor Dr. Piyaratana from Faculty of Buddhism. Dr. Natchapon Sirisawat from Faculty of Art, Chulalongkorn University, moderator today. So, most importantly, my dear student, Overseas Dhammaruta Bhikkhu trainee class 29 who attend international seminar, academic seminar today. Without all of you, the international academic seminar cannot perfect complete it. Thank you very much. Wisdom is the light of the world. Panya lokat sami pachoto. Thank you. So we pay homage to the Triple Gem. Okay, just wait for a minute.
โอกาสนี้ขอกราบอาราธนานิมนต์ท่านพระมหาสมบูรณ์วุฒิกโรรองอธิการบดีฝ่ายวิชาการได้มอบของที่ระลึกมอบทายธรรมเป็นปฏิการะแก่ท่านรองอธิการบดีฝ่ายกิจการต่างประเทศพระมหาสุรศักดิ์ปัจจันตเสโน
And may I take this opportunity to invite
โอเคลูกศิษย์พระธรรมทูตสวดมนต์แปลเป็นภาษาอังกฤษนะครับนิมนต์อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธภะคะวา The blessed one perfectly enlightened one พุทธังภะคะวันตังอภิวาเทมิ I pay homage to the Buddha the blessed one สวากขาโตภะคะวะตาธัมโม The Dhamma is the teaching of the blessed one that is well proclaimed ธัมมังนามัสสามิ I pay homage to the Dhamma ปฏิปันโนภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆ The Sangha the blessed one disciple who have practiced well สังฆังนามามิ I bow down to the Sangha สำหรับลูกศิษย์พระธรรมทูตนะครับเราจะไปสวดมนต์ทำวัดย่อที่สถาบันวิปัสสนาธุระเสร็จแล้วก็พักจนถึงวันพรุ่งนี้เวลาตี 4เลยนะครับ
ลำดับต่อไปขอ
ทุกคนลุกขึ้นครับแล้วก็กล่าวคำปฏิญาณตนพร้อมกันครับนิมนต์ตั้งนะโม3จบนะโมตัสสะนิมนต์ถ่ายรูปหมู่ร่วมกันนะครับนิมนต์ท่านผู้อำนวยการอาจารย์นิมนต์
ขอเรียนเชิญท่านคณะวิทยากรผู้ทรงคุณวุฒิด้วยนะครับขอเรียนเชิญบนเวทีครับ
May we all please have the group photos together.